When we look at the greatest centers in NBA history, a few names almost always come up. Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Shaq. After those, you start to get into names like Moses Malone, David Robinson, and the up-and-coming Nikola Jokic. But sadly, one player was supposed to be in this conversation today, but isn't. During his short-lived best seasons in the NBA, everybody watching the league at the time believed that this guy was destined to be on the short list of the greatest big men of all time. I'm talking about the former league MVP winner, Bill Walton. This 6'11 center was a very hyped prospect coming out of UCLA. He was taken with the first overall pick by the Portland Trail Blazers in the 1974 NBA draft. To say that Walton had a complete basketball game would be an understatement. Even in his rookie season, he displayed basically every elite ability you could possibly hope for in a dominant center. He had a soft scoring touch around the basket, with a reliable jump hook shot that was extremely difficult to defend. He was great on the boards as he had the 7th highest rebounding average. He was immediately recognized as one of the greatest passing big men that the game had ever seen, as he averaged 4.8 assists per game, which was second in the league among centers. He was also a top-tier rim protector, as he averaged 2.7 blocks per game, which was third overall in the league. And again, all of these high rankings were in his rookie season. Of course, at this point, the hype train was already insane for Walton, but it didn't take long for the obstacles to pile up. In only his first 2 seasons in the NBA, Walton badly sprained his ankle. He broke his left wrist multiple times, he dislocated 2 toes, he dislocated 2 fingers, he broke a toe, and he injured his leg in a Jeep accident. Trust me, as far as the medical bills piling up, it only gets worse from here, as I am on record claiming that Bill Walton was the most injury-prone player in NBA history. Somehow, despite all of the pain and recovery time, Walton entered his 3rd NBA season as a terrifying force of basketball nature. He averaged a new high 18.6 points per game. He led the league in both rebounds and blocks with some monstrous averages. And of course, he was among the league-leading centers in assists per game. At only the age of 24, he was second in MVP voting and first-team All-Defense. Then, in the 1977 playoffs, he took his game to the next level, as he averaged 18 points, 15 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.1 steals, and 3.4 blocks over the course of that postseason. Again, at just the age of 24, he led his team to the championship and was the Finals MVP in the process, with one of the greatest postseason performances of all time. Heading into the next season, Walton was ready to further assert his dominance, as he looked to build his case for the title of the greatest center in NBA history. His Blazers started the NBA season with a 50-10 record, looking as if they were ready to steamroll their way to their 2nd straight championship. But that's when Walton broke his foot, ending his regular season. The Blazers finished the rest of the regular season with an 8-14 record without Walton. Despite playing in only 58 regular season games, he was named the league MVP, which is still the record for the fewest games played by an MVP winner. After getting painkiller injections, Walton would return for the playoffs, only to break his ankle in the 2nd game of the 1st round. He would never again return to this level of greatness, as his NBA career became a prolonged nightmare of reoccurring injuries. Now sure, he eventually won another championship as a 6th Man of the Year winner for the 1986 Boston Celtics. But before he even reached his mid-20s, it was clear that his injuries would be a defining part of his career. Over his lifetime, Bill Walton underwent 37 orthopedic surgeries. Honestly, considering the physical trials he had to deal with, it's a miracle he even managed to become a Hall of Famer and an MVP winner. But if it wasn't for these injuries, then his career might have continued on a trajectory that could have made him one of the top 10 greatest players of all time.
Now, even Ralph Nader says he wants to have, like, official inquiry into the refs. What do you guys think of that? You think the refs perhaps were not as accurate as they could have been?
Well, really can't say too much about it, but, other people seen, what happened.
Now, that's
I believed that night when I covered that game here in Los Angeles that it was an abomination, that it was an embarrassment to the league, that it was the worst officiated contest in professional basketball I'd ever seen.
Tonight, a former NBA referee says the playoff series between the Kings and Lakers in 2002 was fixed.
We all said at the time, something's wrong here. The Kings were a better team, but that game was not right. I'm telling you, I was there. That was not right.
What do you think the public's perception is of the integrity of the NBA officials?
Zero. The integrity of the game has been shot.
What surprises me that the league doesn't do anything about it.
Chucky Brown pulled me and said, Mike, if they're bringing a certain crew, it's going to go a certain way. I was like, man, bullshit, man. It's the NBA. Ain't no way. We're up 20 points every game, man. Ain't nothing, even if they do, ain't could stop.
Right.
And so just watching that, man, just seeing it, looking back now, that shit makes me sick, man, because I think that could have been our championship. And so, obviously, you've seen what happened in the game. But, we were definitely the better team that year. I know that for sure. But
In my 8 years of doing YouTube, this question has come up a lot from my viewers. Who was the greatest team in NBA history that didn't win a championship? To be honest, for quite a while, I had a really hard time giving a definitive answer to this question simply because there has been so many great teams in the rich history of the NBA. So how do you narrow it down to just one? But then I had this thought process. Yes, there are many great teams that didn't win, and many teams that came close to winning. But of those teams, there was only one group that I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt deserved to win the title, but was screwed out of it by corruption. Of course, I'm talking about the 2001 to 2002 Sacramento Kings. I imagine many of you don't need an explanation of what happened, but I'll give you a brief summary just in case some of you are unfamiliar. In the early 2000s, the NBA was still rebounding from a massive decline in viewership after Michael Jordan's retirement from the Bulls. One of the sure bets to get views and generate plenty of revenue for the NBA was Shaq, Kobe, and the Los Angeles Lakers. Later on in an interview, David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA at the time, was asked about his personal preference for an NBA Finals matchup, to which he controversially answered, the Lakers versus the Lakers. It made sense considering that this Los Angeles team was exciting, dramatic, and bolstered a massive market. On the other hand, there was the Sacramento Kings, an underdog squad that was lacking the dazzling names and flair of Los Angeles, while being represented by a very small market, with a stadium and Arco Arena that looked remote and desolate compared to the raucous city atmosphere of Staples Center. From a money-making standpoint, there was no question to anyone at the time which team the league office would prefer to make the NBA Finals. So when Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals happened, much of the sports world started crying foul. In that contest, the Lakers shot 27 free throws in the fourth quarter alone, compared to the Kings' total of 9. Every call was seemingly going in the favor of Los Angeles, and even some of the no calls as well, like this elbow from Kobe Bryant to Mike Bibby's face in the most crucial moment. Kings players, coaches, and fans were all appearing to be dumbfounded as the game flew out of their grasp. As you saw in the intro of this video, there was plenty of suspicion at the conclusion of the 2002 West Finals. But after some time, there would be some cold hard evidence. In 2008, Tim Donaghy, a former NBA referee who was guilty on betting on basketball games that he officiated, said that the NBA rigged the 2002 playoff series. Specifically, he said that allegedly, the league scheduled Dick Bavetta to officiate the 6th game, with an agenda to get the Lakers the victory. If that is indeed true, then he succeeded in his mission, and the Lakers would go on to win the series and easily win the championship in a 4-game sweep over the vastly inferior New Jersey Nets. So now you know the essentials of this situation, but now here's my perspective. My history with this team is actually a rather interesting one. For the entirety of my life, I have been a passionate Lakers fan. Growing up in Central California, I had plenty of friends who were either Lakers fans or Kings fans. The rivalry that developed was intense, not just between the teams, but between the fan bases as well. I hated this squad and delighted in their misery. So you can only imagine how happy I was when the Lakers defeated them in the Western Conference Finals. But in the years since, that positive memory has been growing more and more bitter. As someone who appreciates the history of the game and has made it my career goal to put a spotlight on the overlooked talents of NBA history, I've had to witness this former great Sacramento team fade into obscurity. In 2002, Chris Webber was in the argument for the title of the best power forward in the entire league. But you wouldn't know it because in the years since, people only talk about Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, and Dirk Nowitzki as the best power forwards from that era. Mike Bibby was the ideal co-star. He was a fundamentally sound player who was born for the playoff atmosphere, as he remained calm, cool, and collected under pressure. The acquisition of Bibby in the summer of 2001 was the move that elevated them from a good team to a team that was ready to win a championship. Yet with that being said, he's somehow become overshadowed to the other point guard they had before him, Jason Williams, as White Chocolate is more known today due to his flashy passes and his incredible handle. Then they had Peja Stojakovic, who was a certified sniper and a terrific scorer, and he was also without question one of the greatest perimeter shooters in the history of the league. Yet somehow, he's never brought up in that conversation in this modern day. One of the greatest wing defenders of that era was Doug Christie, as he should be remembered for his tenacity and competitive spirit. But he's basically only talked about today because of his coaching career. For a 5-year stretch, Bobby Jackson was arguably the best sixth man of that era. But if you bring him up today, many young people will say, Bobby who? Hedo Turkoglu was a solid weapon off the bench, and even Vlade Divac doesn't get enough credit for the role he played on this team, as he was one of the best passing big men that the game had to offer. Rick Adelman is certainly one of the greatest coaches in league history, but is almost never mentioned in that conversation simply because he finished his impressive coaching career with 2 trips to the NBA Finals, but not a single championship ring. One of the deepest and most cohesive teams in NBA history is basically being overlooked and forgotten in every aspect today, simply because they didn't win the championship necessary to immortalize them in that way. But, as we all know, they probably should have. Overall, their ball movement and team-first approach should be celebrated today on the same level as the 2013 San Antonio Spurs or the 1986 Boston Celtics. But they're not. So even with the rivalry and even with my dislike of this team, I've grown sympathetic. I recognize the injustice that was done to this squad, as they should be celebrated today in basketball lore. Let me make this clear. This team wasn't a fluke of a contender. This was a team who believed that they could win the championship, who prepared each offseason for Shaq and Kobe in the NBA playoffs. They won 61 games, earned home court advantage throughout the postseason, and were on the verge of putting an end to the Lakers dynasty. But within a matter of moments, in a pivotal 6th game, all of that was stripped away, as they were basically powerless to prevent it. In my opinion, the 01-02 Sacramento Kings are the greatest team to never win a championship because they more so than any other failing team deserve to be champions. My advice to fellow Laker fans is go ahead, enjoy the 2002 championship, and talk your trash, because that's what sports is all about. But when it comes to the 2002 Kings and their fans, always give them their respect, because that was truly a special rivalry, and if the allegations are in fact true, then it's honestly horrible that they couldn't get their legitimate shot at a title without outside influences screwing things up.
David Thompson was a flawless basketball player. What was truly unique was that you had a guy who could fly, who could soar, who could do everything physically, and then really had a game as well.
He's my inspiration. I think, as I was growing up. I grew up watching NC State. I was a David Thompson fan. I enjoyed the way he played, his aggressiveness, his scoring capabilities. And at 6'4", being able to play his game above the rim was truly amazing for any kid to watch. Before him, for me, I never saw a 6'4" guy that could jump and be as active and creative as he was, and such a potent offensive weapon.
Until Michael Jordan came along, I would say he was the best one-on-one player I had seen. I know it's a big statement to make, but he just was, in my view, totally unstoppable. When he got it rolling, there was just absolutely nothing you could do.
Long before modern players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jason Tatum, and Anthony Edwards, long before Kobe Bryant, and even before Michael Jordan, there was another guard with a similar skill set, who amazed audiences with his incredible athleticism. I'm talking about the man they called Skywalker, David Thompson. He was a 6'4" shooting guard with a leaping ability that could be matched by very few. Legend has it that Thompson could snag a quarter off the top of the backboard, and according to him, that is in fact true. As an above-the-rim player, he was a pioneer.
The whole term and the whole measuring of vertical leap began, I think, with David Thompson. He vaulted off the ground, exploded off the ground. 44 inches was a lot. It still is a lot. You can tell when he was there on above you, he surprised you.
David could jump higher than Julius, but David had smaller hands. Julius was the glider. David was the leaper.
He was one of the first players to regularly convert alley-oop dunks. He was also one of the first players to do a 360 dunk in the heat of competition.
The whole alley-oop term he created, he innovated the game in terms of playing above the rim.
He had perfected the alley-oop play. The way that he did it became a way that players who were older and, more experienced began to do it.
All of that alone is enough to make him incredibly special. But like Michael Jordan, there was a polished game to go along with his freakish athleticism. Thompson's footwork was pristine, as he knew how to misdirect the opponent with minimal effort. Like MJ, there wasn't often excessive dribbling, but only necessary moves done with speed and conviction. He had one of the quickest first steps in the entire league that enabled him to blow by his defender, and then once he got to the rim, many defending centers became victims, as they did not have the vertical to match this super athlete.
The introduction of the games, they'd say, Skywalker, David Thompson, blah, 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 and the crowd would go ballistic. They go bananas. That would fire him up even before the game would start.
When I dunked the basketball, I used to cross my leg in the air, and it looked like I was walking in the air, so that was a natural name for me.
I picture David going right through the middle, driving from the side, going to the middle, rising up above the centers and jamming.
No matter the opposition, he was coming at you. David Thompson would say, I'm coming to the hoop and I'm going to throw it down in your face, and he succeeded.
Because of his tremendous speed and athleticism, it could be tempting for defenders to play off of him on the perimeter, to give themselves more time to respond to his penetration skills. But that would also be a major risk, considering how Thompson was a deadly perimeter shooter, especially when he was heating up. A great example of that came on April 9, 1978, when it looked like Thompson couldn't miss from just about anywhere on the court. Against the Detroit Pistons, he made 20 of his first 21 shots. In the game, he had 53 points. At halftime. At the end of the night, he had 73 points, 7 rebounds, and 2 assists on 74% shooting.
I got pretty hot in the first quarter. The guys would get me the ball in good field position. So I kept shooting it and kept making it.
To score 73 points in a game, you got to be able to dominate that game. You got to be hitting jump shots, you got to be hitting dunks, you got to do all the different defenses, steals, things of that nature. In a 48-minute game, you got to completely dominate.
After this performance, he received a contract extension from the Denver Nuggets that paid him $4 million over the next 5 years, which at the time made him the highest paid player in all of sports. On the year as a whole, he averaged 27 points per game on 52% shooting from the field. Quite simply, he was one of the most prolific scorers of his era, as he was an All-Star and an MVP finalist in each of the first 4 seasons of his career. By the time he was 24 years of age, it looked like his career was about to ascend to some scary levels of greatness. But unfortunately, that full potential would never be realized. A devastating foot injury made him miss the final 36 games of the 1979 to 1980 season. That was bad enough, but during that time, his issues would go from bad to horrifically worse. Like too many players during that era, he began to struggle with substance abuse, and this addiction would grow stronger and stronger, to the point that it completely derailed his promising career, After his numbers and production inevitably plummeted, he was traded from the Nuggets to the Seattle Supersonics. The situation would hardly improve though, and after less than 2 seasons in Seattle, he had played his final game in the NBA before he even reached the age of 30. In the years since, he has been able to restore much of his life, as he became a Christian, restored his marriage, and re-entered his children's lives. But unfortunately, his days as an elite and promising superstar will always be left in the what-if territory. It's not like he didn't have a lasting impact on the league though. For goodness sake, his game inspired the style of the greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan. And the resemblance is obvious, as it's clear that MJ closely studied Thompson's footwork, offensive moves, and timing. And then athletes have continuously took inspiration from Jordan's moves ever since. So in a way, all of these elite scoring guards of the modern game all leads back to Skywalker, who soared through the air and captured imaginations of aspiring hoopers all over the country, even some who would completely redefine the game and its history.
I think it elevated through the years. When it got to me, I took it another step, and now you got kids that are taking it even on a higher scale. So it's a little David Thompson in all of us.
Who could imagine a greater player than David Thompson flying through the air? Bam! Throwing them down. When you dream of the perfect basketball player, you visualize David Thompson.
Patrick has that task.
There have been nearly as many new Jordan clones as old Jordan championships. Grant, Penny, Jerry, Kobe.
And here's the kid to slam it. Whoa!
The answer. They all left questions, but the latest lookalike most closely profiles the infant Mike. Tar Heel pedigree, dazzling smile, leaves school early, becomes team go-to guy, resurrects Hoopstead City, jumps over the moon, air to land to high sea, sea as in Carter, Vince Carter.
Both of us slashers like to get to the basket and do highlight real dunks or whatever.
Vince has exploded on the scene. Michael came a little more quietly, kind of subtly. He had all aspects of what he did later on, but that had to curate, or if that's the word, cure, as a ham would do.
As Jordan did do. Carter is curing himself into quite a ham.
I know that Michael, meant a lot for the NBA. And I think right now Vince is that same type of commodity.
I can see it, but let's not get ridiculous. You're talking about Michael Jordan.
The difference in him is that Vince does not have the ball handling ability that MJ had.
MJ is often imitated, never duplicated. But you have to say that he's the next thing close to MJ.
Nobody remembers Michael Jordan except maybe you and Kevin Lockery in his rookie year and how much he developed during the course of his career. Vince Carter does some things better than Michael did when he first came in the league. Vince Carter can stroke the three-pointer. Michael was a marginal perimeter shooter when he started off. Vince Carter blocks shots, leads his team in block shots, gets 6 rebounds a game, and has electrifying play very similar to Michael Jordan when he takes the ball to the basket. So it's not a comparison that's out of this world, really. There are similarities between the two guys, and you might even say Vince Carter has a little edge on the Michael Jordan who was a rookie.
Is there pressure as you grow in stature that every arena you go to, people come out to see Vince Carter?
So there's been a rather interesting conversation happening on social media over the last couple of days concerning one of the most highlight-worthy players in the history of the game. Nowadays, Vince Carter is known as the greatest dunker of all time and is recognized for the incredible talent that he was during his prime. But was he actually the face of the NBA at one point in time? The mere suggestion might sound crazy to some, because although Carter was extremely talented, it's hard for younger fans to envision how he could be that popular and that highly regarded while guys like Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Allen Iverson, and Tim Duncan were in the league simultaneously. Well, the truth is, there's some important context that younger fans are often missing. For one, Vince Carter was drafted the same offseason that Michael Jordan retired from the Chicago Bulls. At that point in time, the league office was deeply concerned about the NBA's life after Michael Jordan. And for good reason. MJ's iconic popularity helped make basketball a global sport. And under MJ's reign, the NBA experienced the greatest television ratings that it's ever had. Because of this, the media was obsessed with the idea of finding the quote, next Michael Jordan. And several players were given that mantle, and some very prematurely. Guys like Harold Miner, Jerry Stackhouse, Grant Hill, and obviously Kobe Bryant were all put under that immense pressure. But even more recently to receive that comparison was half man, half amazing Vince Carter. Honestly, unlike some of the others, this comparison made total sense at the time. Like Michael Jordan, Carter was a former North Carolina Tar Heel. He had a remarkable leaping ability and had the perfect combination of skill and athleticism. Now, of course, the NBA isn't just a sport, but it's also a business. And you'd be silly to think that the league doesn't have its own money-making agenda when they decide who to promote. Vince Carter was the perfect candidate for this role, because he had just made his league debut with the Toronto Raptors in 1998, and the Raptors were a new expansion team, who had the responsibility of making the league popular in another country. From that perspective, it made sense for the league to relentlessly promote Carter, because the potential extra revenue was immense. And thus, Air Canada was born. Now, Carter had an impressive rookie season that even had some people saying that he was on the level of Michael Jordan in his rookie year. But the hype train truly reached its insane heights during the 1999 to 2000 season. As you all know, Carter put on an absolute show during the All-Star weekend. And then, later on that summer, he led Team USA to the gold medal in the Olympics, while accomplishing the greatest highlight in Olympic basketball history. This was the beginning of Carter leading the NBA in All-Star votes, including 3 straight seasons from 2000 to 2002. That's right, more people wanted Carter in the All-Star game than Allen Iverson and Tim Duncan while they were winning MVPs, and even more so than Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal while they were winning championships. Vinsanity was on the cover of video games, magazines, he was in music videos, TV shows, and movies. If basketball was anywhere, you could find Carter there between 1999 to 2002. Now, this next personal point might seem a little silly, but I think it appropriately emphasizes how the basketball community viewed Vince Carter at the time. So basically, I've been an avid card collector ever since I was a child. And throughout my years of collecting cards, I've been picking up these Beckett Price Guide magazines, which basically tells you the market value of your cards and the confidence level that investors have in certain players and their potential. If you were to pick up a recent issue like this one I've got here, then you'll see that Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Kobe Bryant have some of the most valuable cards, as expected. Now, this issue of mine is much older. This is the August issue from the year 2000. Meaning Shaq and Kobe just won their first championship. And even with that being the case, Vince Carter still had the most valuable cards on the market of any active player. More so than Kobe, Shaq, Duncan, or Allen Iverson. It wasn't until this issue, in March of 2003, that I noticed that Kobe's cards had finally surpassed Carter's in terms of value. It took 3 straight championships from Kobe for people to finally think that Carter was no longer the card to chase, which is insane when you think about it. If you ask me, Vince Carter was definitely the face of the NBA, although it was a short stint compared to some legends of the game. I would say from 1999 until about May of 2001, Carter was the guy that the league was promoting as the face of their sport. But with his missed shot in Game 7 of the 2001 East semifinals, that's the moment where I believe the momentum shifted, and Allen Iverson became the face of the Eastern Conference, while Shaq and Kobe were becoming the faces of the league as a whole.
Is Kawhi actually a better player under pressure than the great Kobe Bean Bryant?
Yes, he is. Yes, Kawhi is better than Kobe was.
Always the right read. He is the most like Jordan that we've seen. Kawhi Leonard reminds me of Michael Jordan.
Kawhi Leonard is playing like a Michael Jordan or Jordan-esque.
So what does that make Kawhi Leonard?
The closest thing to Jordan that the Philadelphia 76ers have seen.
Is he the best player in the world right now?
Of course Kawhi Leonard is the best player in basketball, and it's about time people recognize it.
he is the worst superstar I have ever seen in sports. Because there's a sentence in here where it says, the deal was with Kawhi Leonard's company, KL2 Aspire, LLC, and included clauses allowing Leonard to do nothing, yet still collect payment. That's the Kawhi Leonard I know. Doing nothing and getting paid for it.
What do you think is the difference with this group where it's been such a struggle to kind of sustain some of the blows you guys have taken early?
Just got to get the right lineups on the court, I guess. Get some more talent, play with better talent, and see what happens.
What? Guys, I gotta be honest. One of the most stunning rise and fall stories of an NBA legacy is from a player that we're witnessing today. Once upon a time, the sky was the limit for Kawhi Leonard. After his championship with the Spurs in 2014 and after his back-to-back DPOY victories, the road to superstardom came quickly. Once upon a time, he looked as if he was the only hope for beating the 2017 Warriors, who many people consider as the greatest team in NBA history. For goodness sake, in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, he had his Spurs up by 21 points over the Warriors in their building. That's when Zaza Pachulia stuck his foot under Kawhi, causing him to roll his ankle and miss the remainder of the series. At that point, there was 8 minutes left in the third quarter, and Leonard already had 26 points and 8 rebounds. He had us believing that he could do something that no one else had ever got close to doing, and that was lead a team to eliminate the overwhelming 2017 Warriors. Could they have actually finished the job if Kawhi had never got hurt? Who knows? Because after all, Golden State almost always played at their best when their backs were against the wall. But again, Kawhi was the type of superstar that had us believing that it could be done. Then he had his dramatic fallout with the San Antonio Spurs before being traded to the Toronto Raptors. And I, like many people, criticized the move, because it was clear Kawhi had no desire to stay in Toronto, and it seemed like it was too much of a gamble for a one-year rental. Alas, Kawhi and the Raptors won the championship, proving that it was in fact worth it. It wasn't just a championship run, but it was the type of run that puts a guy's name into the highest pantheon of NBA legends. Over the course of the playoffs, Kawhi Leonard was starting to receive comparisons to Michael Jordan, and at that time, almost no Jordan fan was scoffing at it. Instead, they were simply enjoying the similarities and the significance of a predominantly mid-range player dominating the NBA in 2019. In the second round against the 76ers, he seemed as if he was a player of destiny, as he not only hit one of the most iconic buzzer beaters of all time, but he averaged an extremely efficient 35 points and 10 rebounds over that 7-game series. After that amazing run, people were genuinely engaging in the conversation of whether or not he had surpassed LeBron James and Giannis as the best player in the NBA. And then he joined the Little Brother franchise in Los Angeles, the LA Clippers. Heading into the 2019 to 2020 season, many people were confidently referring to him as the best player in the game, and it led people to believe that the Clippers were finally ready to replace the Lakers as the team of Los Angeles. I gotta be real with you guys. As a diehard Lakers fan, I was absolutely devastated when he chose the Clippers over my Lakers. I was hoping and looking forward to him being the leader of our franchise for years to come. In hindsight, this is actually pretty humorous, and I think it's fair to say that I'm not so devastated anymore. Even the mainstream media had completely bought into the hype, as Skip Bayless suddenly forgave Kawhi for everything that happened in San Antonio, and not so subtly set up their debate show to be the LeBron guy versus the Kawhi guy. And oh, how that aged like milk. Kawhi went from a guy sitting on the mountaintop to a guy perpetually sitting on the bench. In the 7 seasons after becoming a Clipper, he's only played in 247 out of a possible 490 games. The rate of him being available and on the basketball court is close to that of a coin flip. And then, even when he's been on the court, there hasn't been much to show for it. After being championship favorites, they blew a 3-1 lead in the second round of the 2020 playoffs. Despite initial speculation of them being the next LA dynasty, they only made one Western Conference Finals appearance in the last 6 seasons. At this point in his career, Kawhi is an afterthought for the NBA. The only time he's leading NBA headlines nowadays is when he's connected to some sort of massive corruption. Viewers, I gotta ask, what happened to Kawhi Leonard? A guy who went from being proclaimed as the best of the best, and allegedly the closest thing we've seen to Michael Jordan, to suddenly being the poster child of NBA disappointment, and being viewed as the ultimate freeloader of the league. When it comes to a superstar's reputation, and a talent worthy of being called the best in the league, have we ever seen a greater fall from grace than what we've experienced over the last 6 years from Kawhi Leonard? As most basketball fans already know, Tracy McGrady was simply one of the most talented players to ever play the game. As Kobe Bryant once described him, he was a player who had all the skills and athleticism, but in a 6'9" frame. At his peak, he was averaging as high as 32 points per game, and he's famously known for his iconic comeback over the San Antonio Spurs, where he scored 13 points in only 35 seconds. As talented as McGrady was, his potential reached even higher. But unfortunately, his chronic back injuries disrupted his career and stunted his progression, making him one of the greatest what-ifs of basketball history. With that being said, we still got to witness McGrady perform at an elite level for roughly 7 seasons straight, and within that window, many stories and legacy-defining moments took place that much of the basketball community have since forgotten. Today, we're tackling the story of Tracy McGrady's career and evaluating the events that took place when his legacy was on the line. When McGrady entered the league, he was an 18-year-old kid straight out of high school who would take time to blossom into the superstar we know. T-Mac was only operating as a role player in his time in Toronto, while his cousin Vince Carter was operating as the franchise player and the talk of the town. In his last season as a member of the Raptors, McGrady made the NBA playoffs but was swept out of the first round in 3 games by the New York Knicks. Unfortunately, this early playoff exit would begin to become a theme of his career, a theme that would start to build a narrative about him as a player and about his legacy. In the summer of 2000, McGrady signed with the Orlando Magic, putting him in a position where he was now able to shine as the primary superstar of a team. McGrady was now averaging around 27 points per game and was proving himself to be one of the best perimeter players in the entire league. Orlando finished as a 7th seed heading into the playoffs, where they were matched up with a far more talented Milwaukee Bucks squad. It's also worth mentioning that Tracy's sidekick Grant Hill was out for the playoffs with yet another significant injury, which meant that T-Mac had to carry the team almost exclusively offensively. He put up ridiculously monstrous all-around numbers throughout the series, but ultimately it wasn't anywhere close to enough as the stacked Bucks closed out the Magic in 4 games. The following season was more of the same, as Grant Hill once again missed the entirety of the playoffs, while Tracy had to carry an Orlando squad that was pretty devoid of talent. This time, the Magic were eliminated in 4 games by the Charlotte Hornets, and McGrady once again put up insanely monstrous numbers. He consistently wasn't getting the help he needed, and as a result, this ended up being the 3rd straight season that T-Mac had been eliminated out of the first round of the playoffs. But it was in the next season where his reputation started to take some major hits. From an individual standpoint, McGrady's 02-03 season was likely the best of his career, as he put up his best regular season numbers yet. The thing is, Tracy was still missing a second star, as Grant Hill only played 29 games, which were all in the first half of the season. Orlando finished with a 42-40 record, which was good enough for only the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference and resulted in a matchup with the consistently contending Detroit Pistons. McGrady and the Magic were obviously massive underdogs in this series, and stunningly, they roared out of the gates and managed to get a 3-1 series lead over Detroit. Up to this point, Tracy looked like he was having one of the greatest playoff series in NBA history, as he dominated his way to these absurdly high and efficient numbers against arguably the best defensive team of that era. Unfortunately, the season wasn't yet over at that point, but that didn't stop McGrady from acting like it. In a controversial post-game interview, McGrady confidently stated, "It feels good to get into the second round," even though his Magic were only up 3-1. It was a classic example of pride coming before the fall, as the Pistons went on to crush the Magic in the next 3 games straight, winning by an average of 20.3 points. The series was a tale of two McGrady's, as his last 3 games looked nothing like his first 4, as he was contained to extremely inefficient numbers by Detroit. Not only did McGrady's post-game comment age like milk, but it also started to appear like some self-induced curse, as he once again failed to get out of the first round, and the narrative was now firmly established that he was a superstar that just couldn't advance in the playoffs. What's probably worse than getting eliminated in the first round is not making the playoffs at all, which is what happened in the 03-04 season, as Orlando finished with the worst record in the Eastern Conference, despite McGrady winning his 2nd straight scoring title. At this point, Orlando's management had finally accepted the fact that they were a franchise that needed a rebuild, and traded McGrady to the Houston Rockets. T-Mac expressed his excitement to play with the new star big man Yao Ming. As a legitimate superstar duo, McGrady and Yao led the Rockets to a 51-31 record, and it appeared that McGrady might finally be in a solid position to advance beyond the first round. They were facing a solid Dallas Mavericks team whose Dirk Nowitzki was just reaching the prime of his career. T-Mac started off solid, as did his Rockets, as they stormed out to a 2-0 lead in the series. The Mavericks clawed their way back into it, and the series was heading to a deciding 7th game in Dallas. Although T-Mac had played incredible throughout the majority of the series and had put up his usual strong postseason numbers, he picked the wrong time and place to come out cold, as Tracy missed his first 7 shots of the 7th game. Houston could never find their groove, and the Mavericks completely demolished McGrady and the Rockets, winning the deciding game by a whopping 40 points. At this point in history, many basketball fans, including myself, were confused as to what to make of Tracy McGrady. On one hand, he appeared to be one of the greatest talents that the game of basketball had ever seen, and consistently produced tremendous postseason numbers. But on the other hand, for one reason or another, he just couldn't get past the first round of the playoffs, as he was now 0-5 in his first round appearances. In the following season, Houston was hit with a slew of injuries, including the first major one to Tracy McGrady, as it was the beginning of his devastating back injuries that would ultimately cut his career short. Due to this, the 05-06 Rockets missed the playoffs entirely, finishing with only a 34-48 record. The Rockets franchise was able to bounce back in the 06-07 season, as Yao Ming had a breakout year, asserting himself as Houston's #1 scoring option. T-Mac was still a legitimate weapon, but with his back issues still lingering, he saw a significant drop in his regular season production. With that being said, together, Yao and McGrady led the Rockets to a 52-30 record, good enough for the 5th seed in the West playoffs. Prior to the start of their first round series with Utah, McGrady was being interviewed by ESPN's own Stephen A. Smith. And in the interview, Stephen A. didn't waste any time acknowledging the elephant in the room, T-Mac's inability to lead his team past the first round up until this point. A confident yet agitated McGrady responded with this.
It's on me. If we don't get out of the first round, it's on me. Wait a minute. If we don't get out of the first round this year, it's on me.
It's pretty incredible to see such a bold statement from a superstar like McGrady. It's not often that athletes bet on themselves with such ownership and such a sense of responsibility. The pressure was immense, and almost everyone in the basketball world was waiting to see how it unfolded. Through the first 6 games, McGrady was getting his numbers, but he was doing it at a high volume of shots, as he wasn't shooting the ball very efficiently at all. Fortunately, he was actually getting help from a solid supporting cast, and as a result, the series was tied at 3 games apiece heading into the 7th and deciding game. The pressure for him had never been more intense than it was in this game, and under these extreme circumstances, McGrady produced, finishing Game 7 with 29 points, 13 assists, 5 rebounds, and 3 blocks on 48% shooting. Unfortunately, it still wasn't enough, as Utah Stars had individual performances for the ages. After this close defeat, McGrady had been eliminated from the first round in all 6 appearances of his career. A clearly emotional McGrady was trying hard to keep his composure in the press conference afterwards. But as soon as the questions started to come, T-Mac simply left without answering the question, saying emotionally, "This was beyond devastating. Not only was it yet another first-round defeat, but McGrady's team had a 2-game series lead in 2003, 2005, and 2007, and went on to lose each and every series. The following year, Houston would get a rematch with the Utah Jazz in the first round of the playoffs. But tragically, Yao Ming's season was shut down 2 months before the playoffs began due to a stress fracture in his left foot. This meant that a short-handed McGrady had to do his best to carry the offense for the Rockets. But ultimately, despite a pretty solid series performance, McGrady was eliminated for the 7th time from the first round as the Jazz comfortably closed it out in 6 games. From this point on, Tracy's career wouldn't be about his early playoff exits, but rather about his early regular season exits due to his severe back injuries. Over the next 4 seasons, McGrady's game declined to a role player's level of contribution, and he missed 139 regular season games, and wouldn't get another true taste of playoff basketball. Eventually, in 2013, he was signed by the San Antonio Spurs and was activated just in time for the playoffs. He only saw roughly 25 total garbage time minutes in that postseason, and never scored a single point, as he was only a shell of what he once was. But technically, it did at least allow him to play beyond the first round of the playoffs, since the Spurs went all the way to the NBA Finals that season, before eventually being eliminated in 7 games by the Big Three's Miami Heat. With that, he had played his final minutes of NBA basketball in only his early 30s. So as you can see, T-Mac had one of the most tragic and confusing legacies that the game has ever seen. Although legends like Kobe Bryant have praised him for being the most difficult player he's ever had to guard, T-Mac is also the star who couldn't advance in the playoffs no matter how many opportunities he was presented with. So what do you guys think? Was McGrady unable to advance in the playoffs simply because of all of the bad circumstances, like injuries and lacking supporting casts, or was there something about him as a player that kept him from getting it done? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below.
Why do you think no one else has been able to develop or mimic? Because this is a mimic and copycat league.
Right.
You know, we saw Kobe emulate Mike to a T.
To a T.
Why no one ever tried to emulate arguably the most unstoppable shot ever created?
You know what I heard, Matt, is that it wasn't a cool shot. It didn't look cool.
Okay.
I said it didn't look cool. Scored 38,000 points for that damn shot.
I know.
Why does it have to look cool?
Right.
And nobody could stop it. He either missed or made. It wasn't
nothing you could do about it.
Yeah, it wasn't like you could block it and all that. I mean, I think in all the years that I played with him, all the years that I watched him play before I got to the league, I saw one person block it, maybe 2, and I think Ralph Sampson was one. So I only saw one guy block it, and that was from the weak side, but you couldn't do nothing with that shot. So for guys not to even try that shot, it's amazing to me, you know, because I had a guy at practice, we had a 7-foot African kid in Jersey that we trying to do it, trying to bring him in and develop him.
So
you know what I'm talking about. I can't remember his name though.
Somali Samaki?
Yeah.
That was our guy. I remember. I remember
and so he was like, I block any shot. I was like, I said, I'll tell you what, I'm 6'4", you can't block my sky hook. And I shot this shot about 10 times in practice on it. He couldn't block it.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm 6'4".
Right, imagine being 7.
That's why I don't understand why it was a shot that wasn't duplicated, like you said, over the years. But from what I heard, guys were like, it's not a cool shot.
Very few players, if any, have really had a significant sky hook. And why don't they learn it?
The reason that young kids today don't learn how to shoot hook shots is because everybody is so enamored with the three-point shot. So the kids, they don't want 2 points. They don't want to work with their back to the basket. That's not cool. They want to go out there in the stratosphere and shoot three-pointers. But they're not teaching the young kids how to score in the paint with their back to the basket, and therefore they don't, a lot of them don't get to learn the hook shot, and they don't get to realize that if you get close to the basket, a lot more of your shots will go in.
For many, many years, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar stood atop the NBA's all-time scoring list, and he achieved that primarily with one beautiful basketball shot, the skyhook. The skyhook is not just an ordinary basketball shot, or even an ordinary hook shot. Basic hook shots don't reach as high into the air. There's often a follow-through with the shooting arm as it moves towards the basket, meaning it's more easily contested by the opposing defender. But the skyhook is different. It requires large mitts that can grip the ball comfortably with only one hand. And then it's about raising the basketball straight up into the sky, and instead of moving the arm closer to the basket like a basic hook shot, it's just a simple flick of the wrist. There's less movement and more precision, which naturally requires even more practice to perfect it. As Byron Scott said in the intro of this video, even as a 6'4" player, it's lethal. But as a 7'2" player with an even longer wingspan, it makes you basically unstoppable. From an accolade standpoint, you can make an argument that Kareem is the most accomplished player ever. He was a 19-time All-Star, he won 6 NBA championships, and an NBA record 6 league MVPs. And again, this was due primarily to his bread and butter, the skyhook. There were certain attributes of the captain that added to the shot's effectiveness. For one, Kareem was a magnificent athlete who had a remarkably high vertical leap, especially in comparison to the general NBA big man. Even all-time great shot blockers who were as tall as 7 foot 7 inches tall, like Manute Bol for example, were completely helpless to stop it. This in a way made Kareem the ultimate go-to option in 1 or 2 point deficits with little time left on the clock, because he could essentially get off a good look at will. And for both the Milwaukee Bucks and the Los Angeles Lakers, it was often the difference between a win and a loss. None of this came easily and quickly though. According to Kareem, he worked on this shot daily ever since the 5th grade, and that's when he first started implementing the George Mikan drill into his practices, which is basically constant switching between right and left-handed hooks around the basket. But obviously, the hard work and repetition paid off, as it not only enabled Kareem to become one of the greatest players of all time, but it also gave him incredible longevity as a scorer. Even as his leaping ability and speed plummeted, Kareem was still able to score effectively for his Lakers until he was 42 years old. Again, that's the power of this unstoppable shot, which many people, including yours truly, believe is the most unstoppable shot of all time. So if this is all the case, and a top 3 player in league history was able to build his Hall of Fame career off of it, then why don't we see more players today trying to replicate this shot? Well, I think there's a variety of contributing factors, but the fact that it isn't considered quote cool is certainly one of them. Once in an interview, while he was an active player, Shaquille O'Neal called the skyhook one of the most effective shots in the history of the game. He went on to say, "My father made me shoot it all the time, but being a hip-hop kid, I didn't want to do it. We're different. We like to be a lot cooler." Later on, Kareem would say, "It's not a macho shot." He recognized how it was starting to go out of style all the way back in the 1960s, but he proceeded to implement it into his game anyway. Now, even if some modern players don't have a problem with its quote lack of coolness, the reality is that it's still a very difficult shot to master. Kareem had the benefit of utilizing it for most of his life, and from a posture and mechanics standpoint, it's simply unlike any other type of shot within the league. Now, some have said that it doesn't carry much value in the modern NBA, all because of the inflation in three-point shots. But that simply isn't true, even when looking at some of the most crucial analytics. For his career, Kareem shot an absurdly efficient 55.9% from the field. For some perspective, consider the fact that the league average three-point efficiency is 36%. This means that the average Kareem Abdul-Jabbar shot is literally more valuable than the average three-point shot is in this modern NBA. That's just when looking at Kareem's career though. In his prime in 1972, he was hitting 57.4% of his shots on an insane volume of attempts that translated to 34.8 points per game. If you're scoring that many points on that level of efficiency, then the advanced stats would suggest that a player like that should be shooting the ball basically every single time he touches it. Now, we've seen glimpses of it throughout the years. Yao Ming is one player specifically who had a similar form and soft touch on his skyhook, but these examples grow fewer and farther between. Unfortunately, it's so out of the minds of the current day players that it seems as if it may never make a significant comeback. But at the very least, there's some small reasons for hope. The NBA's most promising young star currently is Victor Wembanyama, and he's expressed interest in learning the shot and implementing it into his game at some point in his career. This is a player who has more quickness and agility than any other player who's played the game at his size. And consider the fact that he's several inches taller than Kareem, with a wingspan that's rumored to be close to 8 feet long. If he, of all people, can master this lost art, then the word unstoppable might not be strong enough to emphasize the dominance he would have over the league. The NBA Hall of Famer, Dennis Keith Rodman. What if I told you that one of the most fascinating periods of his career is one that many people don't even know about, which was a small window of time filled with many highs, lows, and plenty of controversy. As you all know, the Worm was a 5-time NBA champion who won 2 titles with the Pistons and 3 with the Chicago Bulls. He's one of the top 5 greatest rebounders of all time, and he's one of the top 5 greatest defensive players in NBA history. The vast majority of his career is well documented and well known by the general audience. But contrary to popular belief, there was another fascinating chapter in his story, even after his time with the Bulls. At the end of the 1997 to 1998 NBA season, the Bulls were celebrating their 6th championship in 8 seasons. But the spoils of success were bittersweet, because the Bulls general manager, Jerry Krause, was determined to blow up the very roster that had made his name famous. Phil Jackson was forced out of his head coaching position. Michael Jordan retired in response to Jackson's firing. Scottie Pippen was traded to the Houston Rockets, and the 37-year-old Dennis Rodman was simply cut by the Bulls management, leaving him as a free agent for any potential suitors within the league. The thing is, there was no interest, at least for a while. Yes, Rodman was coming off of recent championship success in Chicago, but he was also remembered for being a locker room headache in his latter years in Detroit and in his 2 seasons in San Antonio. He was also clearly on the decline, as he started in less than half of the Bulls' playoff games in 1998 and didn't start in a single game of the NBA Finals. Not only was he a risk from a chemistry standpoint, but even the upside was now limited due to his quickly increasing age. But alas, one team was desperate enough to make the call: the Los Angeles Lakers. Although the Lakers were certainly one of the most talented teams in the league at the time, to describe them as a work in progress would be an understatement. They had been swept and gentlemen swept out of the last 2 postseasons, and were annually failing to live up to their high expectations. They were a group of dysfunctional egos. Their leader was best described as a giant entitled child, who was as sensitive and demanding as he was playful. Their 20-year-old phenom was anxious to assert himself, and his selfish and showboating approach to the game had often alienated his teammates, causing them to resent him. Their head coach, Kurt Rambis, was a rookie at the position, and he had just replaced the fired Del Harris after 12 games played in the new season. Rambis had no experience as a head coach, and although he was immersed in the players' egos, managing them would be a near impossible task, because he was just starting to get his feet wet with the playbook, let alone the players. On top of all of that, they were now adding the league's most notorious locker room wildcard. And get this, the Lakers were bringing him in with the intention of him being a leader and teaching this team how to win. Yeah, the guy who took Vegas vacations mid-season on the Bulls was now being leaned upon to lead in LA. Many began to question if the Great Western Forum was now becoming a purple and gold circus. To say that the team was split on the acquisition would be an understatement. The Lakers owner, Jerry Buss, was elated to get it done, while their general manager, Jerry West, wasn't thrilled in the slightest. Shaquille O'Neal was thrilled with the move, but the Lakers starting point guard, Derek Harper, said that he thought it was yet another distraction for the team. They say that first impressions are important, and if that's the case, then there's a lot to take away from Rodman's. After plenty of public speculation, Dennis officially announced he was joining the Lakers in a Planet Hollywood casino. Or at least, that's what every reporter in the building expected. He showed up 40 minutes late to his own event alongside of his wife, Carmen Electra. He appeared intoxicated, talked about the great intimacy he was having with his wife, and said that he wanted to play with the Lakers and wanted to play basketball again, as if nothing was agreed upon with the organization. He then told the group of reporters that he only called for a meeting to see if they would show up, and they did. Then a frustrated reporter told Rodman that he was selfish and that he had wasted their time. And then Rodman proceeded to cry and rant about how he's misunderstood. So the reporters never got an official announcement from Dennis. But 2 days later, the world would now know from the media that he had officially become a Los Angeles Laker. The city of Los Angeles had championship expectations for the last several years, and seeing how they hadn't won a title since the Showtime era in the late 80s, they were basically starving at this point. Now, after adding a player who had been a part of the last 3 NBA championship teams, the crowds were electric, as Rodman was rewarded with a standing ovation for basically every play he did right.
Set to 24, he comes in deep, throws up an 8-footer, no, rebound is off, Rodman wants it, Rodman taps the ball to Shaq and he scores! Rodman on a double tip, got the ball to Shaq. No other player on the Laker team could have made that rebound.
He is so good at just tapping the basketball.
Kobe with the drive, stop, 20-foot jumper and away short. Rebound is off, he's grabbed by Rodman, underneath to Shaq, good feed, Shaq scores! Rodman's second rebound. Look at the people standing, shaking their fists, shaking the building.
A simple rebound, and he gets a standing ovation. That one, the ball bounced right to him, but it didn't matter.
Even his teammates were starting to feel the buzz, as the Lakers were not only clicking with their new addition, but they were winning. They defeated the Clippers in his debut game, and then they comfortably beat Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets, with Michael Jordan spectating in the crowd, looking like a proud father. After they won their first 2 games with Rodman in the lineup, Dennis took some time to talk about his leadership with Ahmad Rashad, and even managed to forget his own wife's name for a moment.
Here with Dennis Rodman. Now, Dennis, there's so much hype, so much hoopla with you coming on this team about you being the answer. You guys should now go straight to the championship. Do you feel any pressure with all that on your shoulders?
I think the last time I felt pressure when I got married. Everyone in this world knows what I can do and what I can bring to a team. I bring excitement, I bring a lot of hustle, enthusiasm, and this team needs something right now. They need a little leadership, and I thought I'd never say that. But, I'm on a different team with good young guys.
Yeah, but you do lead in your own way.
Yeah.
But you have played on some great basketball teams. As you look around you on this team, does this team have the potential of winning NBA championships?
Well, if these guys can keep focused, stay focused every day, and go out there and do what it takes to win. No matter who scores the point, no matter who's the hero that day, just go out there and work together as a team.
And you will be the leader in that area.
Well, I go out there and do what I do. I go out there and play the biggest guys, the toughest guys. They see me go out there doing it every day in and day out. I hope it rubs off.
All right, Dennis, good to see you, man. Good luck to you.
I want to say hello to my wife, Tara Patrick. I hope that you're...
Los Angeles continued their dominating run and started the Worm era with a 10-game winning streak, after starting the season with a 6-6 record without him. Over that stretch, Rodman was averaging 10.3 rebounds per game and only 25 minutes of action per night. He got as many as 20 rebounds in a victory over the Clippers. At this point, even Jerry West had changed his tune, as he referred to Rodman as a basketball genius in an interview. You would think, with this much success, that it would be all smiles in the Lakers locker room. But unfortunately, that wasn't exactly the case, as Rodman missed several team practices, while other teammates complained about the unequal standards that they were held to. Rodman's gambling and party-heavy lifestyle continued, which resulted in public rumors that he was cheating on his wife. Even Shaq, who was initially in favor of bringing in Rodman, was starting to become frustrated with his questionable practices and decision-making, as he would often take naps during team scrimmages and often smelled repulsive, since he only showered before games rather than after. Things would quickly get even more wild. After the 10th straight win, Rodman had to leave the team for personal reasons, and apparently even the head coach Kurt Rambis didn't know why. There were rumors that Rodman had unpaid gambling debts. There were rumors that Elektra was now cheating on him, and there were even rumors that they were getting a divorce. Needless to say, it was a distraction for the Lakers, as Dennis missed their next 3 games, and LA went 1-2 in that stretch. When he returned to the lineup, the Lakers would win their next 2 games over Orlando and Dallas, which meant their winning streak was extended to 12 games when Rodman was in the lineup. As a reward for his play, Rodman was moved to the starting lineup for the first time. But although his minutes may have increased significantly, his level of focus seemed to decrease. The off-the-court drama was starting to affect Rodman's performance, as he was lacking his usual effort defensively, while getting into an excessive amount of on-the-court altercations. He was also now missing every other team practice, as he was less reliable than ever before. All of these headaches may have been tolerable if the Rodman era maintained its dominant start. But after the 12 straight victories, Rodman and the Lakers proceeded to go 6-6, which is the same record they had before he had signed. On April 13th, in a matchup against the Portland Trail Blazers, Dick Stockton and Hubie Brown perfectly summed up what the Rodman experiment had amounted to.
A late report on Dennis Rodman is that he has a sore left elbow and will not play in the second half. And Hubie, everyone talks about how he could be the missing link in the puzzle for the Lakers. I think at this point you'd have to say that his signing has been a detriment to this team, because with all of the problems that he has brought upon this team, missing practice, going off on his own, all of the things, we don't have time to enumerate it. He really hasn't done the job they wanted, the offensive rebounding, as much as he has.
Just think out here. There are 9 power forwards in the West who have played in the Western All-Star game. Now think about that. So he has been dominating now in the last 10 days by Karl Malone, by Weber, by Baker at Seattle, and then by Grant here this evening. Now he is getting destroyed at his strong suit, defense. He cannot control these guys, and he's being out-rebounded. So, he can pout and do all that he wants, but there are no suspensions. So who are you and I? Because they play him and start him the very next game.
In the very next team practice after these comments, Rodman would show up without his shoes or socks, claiming that he didn't know where they were. And that was the last straw for the organization. Rodman was immediately released from the team. In his 23 games in Los Angeles, he averaged 2 points, 11.2 rebounds, and had a total of 11 technical fouls. Although many of the Lakers on that roster were relieved to see him go, one of the guys who didn't want him to leave was actually Kobe Bryant.
Kurt was put in a very tough situation. One, because he was the head coach for the Los Angeles Lakers, first head coaching job, and then you bring in Dennis. Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. I would love to have Dennis right now. I would love to. Win cures everything. If we don't drop these last 2 games, he's still here.
Now, the 1999 Lakers wouldn't really improve after they released Dennis Rodman. They would finish out the year with 9 wins and 9 losses, including a playoff sweep at the hands of the eventual champion San Antonio Spurs. But during the offseason, the Lakers would hire Phil Jackson to be their new head coach, which would be the dawn of a new and very successful era. According to Rodman, after the Lakers had hired Jackson, he was waiting anxiously by his phone, waiting for a call from the Lakers, since him and Jackson had previously had championship success together. But that call would never come. To me, this is one of the more fascinating and interesting what-ifs in NBA history. Because if you ask me, without question, the 1999 Lakers had a much higher ceiling with Rodman in the lineup. But that team was also like a group of sheep without a shepherd. They desperately needed the calm and composed leadership that Phil Jackson would provide 1 year later, which in Rodman's case was 1 year too late. If Jackson didn't take a 1-year hiatus after his departure from the Bulls and was available for the Lakers to manage the egos, the chemistry, and the drama, then I can only imagine how much more success the Lakers would have had with Dennis Rodman in 1999. Unfortunately, we'll never know for sure.
In the end, who would have thought Carmen Electra would have gotten more out of her marriage to the Worm than did the Lakers?
An often forgotten era of Lakers history was the small window of time between Magic Johnson's retirement and the Shaq and Kobe acquisitions. By their standards, the mid-90s was a rough and drama-filled era for the purple and gold. But at the very least, you'd be wrong if you assumed that they were never competitive. Players like Eldon Campbell, Cedric Ceballos, and Eddie Jones were some of the major names on the roster during that time. But one other guy was especially the life of the party, and was the closest thing to Showtime that the Lakers had without Magic Johnson. Unfortunately, his career would go on to be utterly derailed because of one very stupid thing he would say at a crucial part of an NBA season. I'm talking about the 6'1" point guard, Nick the Quick Van Exel. To put it simply, Van Exel was a walking, breathing highlight. The best way I could describe him is picture a smaller Jamal Crawford, but as a much better passer. In a similar fashion, Van Exel had a filthy handle of the basketball, as he consistently made defenders look foolish with his killer crossover and misdirection. He was a solid three-point shooter and a reliable floor general. Not much was expected of Van Exel when he originally came to the NBA. He was drafted by the Lakers in the second round of the 1993 NBA draft. With that being said, it wouldn't take very long for the league to see what he was capable of, as he displayed his exceptional skills on the court, and averaged nearly 14 points and 6 assists in his rookie season in the NBA. The very next season, his game would take a massive leap forward, as he increased his scoring to 17 points per game and his assists to 8.3 per contest, as he established himself as a respectable dual threat. Those weren't the only things about his game that was noteworthy though. Van Exel had the skills to create his own shot at will, and over time, he became known as one of the best clutch shot makers that the league had to offer. It didn't matter if he was double teamed, off balance, or 40 feet away. If Van Exel was shooting the final shot, there was a very good chance that it was going in. Not everything was sunshine and rainbows during his time with the Lakers though. During Magic Johnson's brief return in the 95-96 season, a lack of chemistry became a major issue for this squad, as Van Exel was frustrated that he had to relinquish some of his orchestrating responsibilities to Magic. Van Exel also had problems with authority, but especially in the case of dealing with the Lakers head coach, Del Harris. He didn't respect Harris and often ignored his coach's requests. It had reached such a boiling point that the two nearly got into a fight during a team practice, where the other players had to step in and physically intervene. Speaking of which, Van Exel was also known to have a temper, and his explosive attitude often got the best of him on the basketball court, as he was often at the center of any altercation and was suspended quite frequently as a result. He wasn't quite on Dennis Rodman's level of dramatic locker room distractions, but in the 1990s, Nick was about as close as it got. Still, his talent on the court could not be denied, and after the Lakers had acquired a prime Shaquille O'Neal and a young Kobe Bryant, it appeared as if he would have an opportunity to be the leading floor general on a championship team. In the 97-98 season, at the age of 26, Van Exel was selected to his first All-Star game, alongside of his fellow stars of Shaq, Kobe, and Eddie Jones, making them one of the few teams in NBA history to have 4 All-Stars on the roster simultaneously. This incredibly talented group went 61-21 throughout the regular season, and had many people believing that they were the favorites to represent the West in the NBA Finals. Unfortunately, for the second straight season, they ran into the Utah Jazz, this time in the Western Conference Finals. They had no answers for the pick and roll of Stockton and Malone, while Utah's defense did a fantastic job of limiting the Lakers' perimeter weapons. The Lakers quickly fell behind in the series 3-0. As a result, the lack of energy in the Lakers' locker room was borderline depressing. In order for them to win the series and advance to the NBA Finals, they would have to do something that no team has ever done before in league history, and that's come back from an 0-3 deficit. Sure, none of the Lakers players were feeling particularly confident in that moment, but at the very least, none of them had flat out quit and accepted defeat. Well, that was until the last team practice before Game 4. At the end of that practice session, the players huddled up, put their hands in the middle, and in unison said 1, 2, 3, team, which is what they had done throughout that entire season. The thing is, that's not what Van Exel said. Instead, this was the moment where his lack of maturity dealt its most brutal consequences. This was the moment where Van Exel made a decision that would not only ruin his NBA career, but it would result in him largely being forgotten in the city of Los Angeles. Instead of 1, 2, 3, team, in a jokingly manner, Nick said 1, 2, 3, Cancun, implying that the Lakers were on their way to a vacation in Cancun after they would get eliminated in Game 4. According to Jeff Pearlman's book 3 Ring Circus, the gym went dead quiet. Kobe Bryant looked at his teammate as if he had just spoiled milk. Rick Fox was equally disgusted, whispering, "Can you believe this?" to O'Neal. Even Eddie Jones, Van Exel's friend, was taken aback. "What the hell was that about?" he asked. O'Neal went directly to General Manager Jerry West's office to tell him about the incident, to which the veteran executive said bluntly, "After all of this ends, Nick is done here." Things then proceeded to go exactly how you'd expect. The Lakers were eliminated in Game 4, and Nick Van Exel was promptly traded away from the team.
And then, of course, we got Shaq and Kobe, and, it went to a whole different level. And then they traded my ass.
How devastated were you?
I was not devastated.
You were not?
It was time to go.
Okay.
Well, let me change it. I was upset because of the location they sent me.
Denver?
I wanted to leave, but at the time, Denver was one of the worst teams in the NBA. So Jerry West was like, "Okay, I'm going to stick it to your little ass." And he did.
Now, as Van Exel alluded to, he wasn't just traded away from the Lakers, but he was purposely punished by Jerry West, as he was sent to the Denver Nuggets, who were the worst team in the entire league, and who had just wrapped up their season with an 11-71 record. Over those next few seasons in Denver, Van Exel would have his best season statistically, getting as high as 19 points per game and 9 assists per game. But naturally, no one cared, because the team was utter garbage. And simultaneously, he had to watch his former Lakers go on to be a dynasty, as they won 3 straight championships. Now into his 30s, Van Exel was moved to a reserve role off the bench, as he became a journeyman, playing 2 seasons in Dallas, 1 season in Golden State, 1 season for Portland, and 1 season for San Antonio. Just think about how crazy all of this was for a second. At the time Van Exel made the Cancun joke in 1998, Shaq was 26 years old and was just starting to reach his prime. Kobe Bryant was 19 years old and was on the verge of becoming a superstar. The Lakers were on the cusp of consistent championship success, but all because of one horrifically timed joke, the Lakers were willing to trade away their all-star floor general to the worst team in the entire league. And tragically, his career would never recover as a result. In an alternate universe, Van Exel shuts his mouth, doesn't get traded away, and goes on to win multiple championships with Shaq and Kobe's Lakers, and gets immortalized fondly in Lakers lore. But in our reality, because of his poor decision making, he's the kind of guy that I have to remind people that he once existed in the NBA. Long before Anthony Davis was getting buckets, there was another man known as AD. His name is Adrian Dantley, and to this day, he is one of the most underappreciated players in the history of basketball. Adrian was the definition of a walking bucket, as the guy was methodical and extremely fluid with his offense. He was a 6'5" small forward, but he wasn't the most athletically gifted. On the contrary, he often seemed kinda slow. Don't get me wrong, he definitely had another gear, and could accelerate a little bit if he wanted to. But more often than not, his preference was simply to go through the motions and trust his veteran savviness and fundamentals. Coming into the NBA, he was taken with the 6th overall pick in the 1976 NBA draft by the Buffalo Braves, and it didn't take very long for the 5 teams who passed up on him to start regretting their decision. In his rookie campaign, AD averaged 20 points, 7.6 rebounds, and 1.2 steals on a stellar 52% shooting from the field. In the history of the NBA, only 7 non-centers have averaged over 20 points per game on over 50% shooting from the field in their rookie season, and Dantley is one of them. Thanks to his impressive debut season, he easily won the league's Rookie of the Year award. Now the Braves only finished that season with a 30-52 record, regardless of the fact that the team had some talent, with guys like Bob McAdoo, Randy Smith, and Adrian Dantley. The thing is, Buffalo felt like they had an opportunity to contend, if they just upgraded with veteran star players. So shockingly, they traded Dantley to the Indiana Pacers in exchange for the all-star Billy Knight, who was coming off of a season where he averaged 27 points per game. This stunning trade made Dantley the first and only Rookie of the Year winner in league history to be immediately traded after winning the award. A motivated Dantley took a massive leap forward in Indiana, and in his first 23 games there, he averaged 26.5 points per game and 9.4 rebounds on 50% shooting from the field. Now here's the thing. At that time in the NBA, the common narrative throughout the league was that a team couldn't win a championship without a great big man, and the Pacers didn't have one. The Los Angeles Lakers had 2 great centers at that time, in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and in his backup James Edwards. So in a surprising package deal, the Pacers traded Dantley to the Lakers for James Edwards. In LA, Dantley had a reduced role, as the Lakers already had an array of capable scorers, like Kareem, Norm Nixon, and Jamal Wilkes. In his time with the Lakers, he averaged nearly 20 points per game while making roughly 52% of his shots. After a full season in Los Angeles, the Lakers decided they had enough capable wings, and needed a solid power forward to help out Kareem down low. So Adrian Dantley was traded yet again, this time to the Utah Jazz in exchange for the former MVP winner Spencer Haywood. So let's quickly recap and understand just how crazy this whole thing was. Dantley was a Rookie of the Year winner and had quickly proven himself as one of the best scorers in the entire league. And yet, because of a bunch of very specific circumstances, he had played for 4 different teams in just his first 4 seasons in the NBA, all by the age of 24. Finally in Utah, he was in a situation where he was highly desired and embraced, and he immediately stepped into the role of a team leader and a premier scorer. It was the first All-Star season of his career, as he averaged 28 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists, on an utterly insane 57.6% shooting from the field. He was just getting started though. Over the next 4 seasons straight, Dantley averaged at least 30 points per game in each and every one of those seasons. In the history of the NBA, only 4 players have averaged over 30 points per game in 4 straight seasons. And those players are Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, Oscar Robertson, and Adrian Dantley. Talk about some incredible company. But here's the craziest part. Of those 4 players, Dantley was easily the most efficient from the field during that scoring streak, as he shot an insane 56% from the field. That would be impressive for an MVP level center, but for a small forward to average over 30 points in 4 straight seasons while shooting 56% is simply jaw-dropping. No other wing player in NBA history has ever been close to achieving what Dantley did in that stretch. Unfortunately, Utah wasn't a very deep team at that time, so despite the historic scoring eruptions, the furthest they made it under Adrian's leadership was the Western Conference semifinals in 1984 and in 1985. In total, Dantley spent 7 seasons with the Utah Jazz, finishing as high as 7th in the MVP race in 1984. In the summer of 1986, the Jazz and Dantley couldn't come to terms on a contract extension to his liking, so the team decided to embrace a rebuild and traded Dantley to the contending Detroit Pistons, in exchange for Kelly Tripucka and Kent Benson. Now Adrian was one of many elite weapons, as Detroit had stars like Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, and Bill Laimbeer. He now had to reduce his scoring role, but even with that being the case, he was still incredibly effective with the team, as he averaged roughly 21 points on 52% shooting in his 2.5 seasons in Detroit. As the team's leading scorer, they made it all the way to Game 7 of the 1987 East Finals, where they were eliminated by Larry Bird and the Boston Celtics. Then again, as the team's leading scorer, they made it all the way to the NBA Finals in 1988, where they were controversially eliminated by the Los Angeles Lakers in the 7th and deciding game. After getting extremely close to the mountaintop, the Pistons were poised to make a championship run in 1989, but behind the scenes, things got heated between Adrian Dantley, Isaiah Thomas, and the head coach Chuck Daly, as Dantley wanted to be a greater focal point of the offense, and was frustrated that some of his minutes were going to Dennis Rodman. As a result, Detroit traded Dantley to the Dallas Mavericks, in exchange for another scoring star, Mark Aguirre. Part of me wonders if Dantley ever regretted the role he played in his split with the Pistons, because Detroit went on to win the NBA championship that season, and the following season as well. It was at this point that Adrian's career started to rapidly decline, as he was now well into his 30s, and was not quite the same dominant scorer that he once was. By the end of the 1991 NBA season, he had played his final game within the league. Now, to evaluate his career, there are several things that I want you to know about Dantley. His production overall was also insane. For some perspective, let me ask you, just how productive was Kobe Bryant over the 2000s decade, where he was likely the best player in the entire world? Well, here's the averages of Kobe Bryant in the 2000s in comparison to Adrian Dantley's numbers in the 1980s. They were extremely similar, as Kobe averaged 1.7 more points, while Dantley was about 10% more efficient from the field. When you look at it this way, you really begin to understand just how dominant he was as an individual talent. The other thing you need to know about Dantley is that he was quite possibly the most unlucky star in NBA history, because every time he was on the verge of winning a championship, something would happen that took him out of that situation. In 1979, he was traded away from the Los Angeles Lakers, right before they drafted Magic Johnson, and immediately won the championship. In 1986, he was traded away from the Utah Jazz, right before Karl Malone and John Stockton entered the starting lineups, as they became perennial contenders. In 1988, he was screwed out of a ring, as the famous Phantom Foul call and the controversial end to Game 7 of the 1988 Finals sealed the championship victory for the LA Lakers. And then, during the 1989 season, he was traded away from the Detroit Pistons, right as they went on to win back-to-back NBA championships. Somewhere in an alternate universe, this guy has multiple championship rings, and is properly celebrated as the greatest scorer of his era. But instead, in our current reality, he's only known by basketball superfans as one of the most overlooked and forgotten greats of all time.
The Boston Celtics are the NBA World Champions.
I pride myself in being the guy who's going to win it for us and deliver under pressure. And it didn't happen.
I hope he was hurting. Hope it killed him. He made some bad plays down the stretch, and nobody in there was happier than me. You know, not only winning the game makes you feel good, but just knowing the other guy's suffering, and you know he was.
Earvin Magic Johnson is seen by many, maybe even most, as the greatest point guard in NBA history. This incredibly flashy superstar made it all the way to the NBA Finals 9 times in his career, and in almost every instance, he excelled on the court when it mattered the most. Most basketball historians would consider Magic as one of the most clutch players of all time. But unfortunately, in one specific final series, he was anything but clutch, and the outcome was so devastating to him emotionally and psychologically that people at the time questioned whether or not he would be able to recover and redeem his reputation. To understand the context and the magnitude of the moment, we have to briefly recap the beginning of Magic's career. The 1979 NCAA championship game was basically the beginning of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson's rivalry, as it was not only a massive contest for the two stars involved, but to this day, it is still the highest viewed NCAA game in all of history. Magic and Michigan State took home the national championship, right as he was about to make his entry into the NBA. Over the next few seasons, Magic and Bird would take the NBA by storm, as Johnson led his team to the title in 1980, then Bird Celtics won in 1981, and then Magic's Lakers won in 1982. Almost instantaneously, they had become the two biggest stars in the NBA. Yet despite their individual rivalry and their continual success, their teams kept narrowly avoiding each other in the NBA Finals, which was an unfortunate reality that both the league office and the general audience wanted to see rectified as soon as possible. Then, in 1984, it finally happened. Magic's Lakers and Bird's Celtics were set to square off in the NBA Finals, for what was certainly one of the most highly anticipated matchups in sports history. Up to this point, given the talent and resume of the two very proven stars, you would expect these legends to perform at their best when it absolutely mattered the most. And most of the time in this series, they did. Over the course of the series, Larry Bird averaged 27 points, 14 rebounds, and 4 assists, while hitting 48% of his shots, while Magic averaged 18 points, 8 rebounds, and nearly 14 assists, on 56% shooting from the field. Based on these numbers, you would think that Magic was anything but tragic in this series. But although Magic may have showed up for the big games, he shrunk in its biggest moments. After stealing Game 1 from Boston, Los Angeles had an opportunity to take a stronghold of the series by winning Game 2 on the road as well. The score was tied at 113 with only 13 seconds left on the clock, and what Magic proceeded to do next was shockingly uncharacteristic of him.
You watch the clock at the lower part of your screen. They're looking for Kareem. Magic Johnson keeps looking inside. 2 seconds, 1 second. And they don't get it off.
Magic simply dribbled out the clock in one of the most perplexing decisions in basketball history. Now in overtime, with less than a minute remaining, Magic missed a wide open jumper that would have put the Lakers up by 3. Then, on the other end of the court, Magic is late to close out on Scott Wedman, who hits the game-winning jumper for Boston. Now the Lakers would bounce back for Game 3 in Los Angeles, as they blew the Celtics out 137-104. But then, in Game 4, the game was close, and Magic would find himself in a similar situation to Game 2. Once again, the game was tied at 113, and yet again, Magic disappointed and left his fans stunned.
Rambis to Magic. To be sure they won't let the time run out this time as they did in Game 2. 8 seconds. Steals the ball and the Celtics call a timeout with 3 seconds to play.
The game went to overtime, and the score is tied at 123 with only 35 seconds left on the clock. Now Magic is at the free throw line where he continued to crumble under the pressure. Looking at this man at the line, and based on the fear in his eyes, you wouldn't know that he was already a 3-time champion and once won the Finals MVP at just the age of 20. Then on the other end, Larry Bird buried the game-winning fadeaway right over the top of Magic Johnson. The energy, effort, and execution was so lacking for Magic in these instances that many basketball fans have gone on to speculate that this whole thing was fixed, and that Magic allegedly threw the game on purpose. As wild as that sounds, it somehow seems even more plausible when you consider just how bad the Hall of Fame point guard looked in the most pivotal moments. Even with these unforced errors in Game 2 and Game 4, Magic and the Lakers still somehow forced a Game 7 in Boston. Yet again, the game was close, and with less than 2 minutes remaining, Magic had the opportunity to redeem himself in an epic fashion. But instead, he solidified one of the greatest choke jobs in basketball history.
Lakers can cut it to 3 with a minute and a half now remaining. Magic Johnson goes up without the ball, and here's Dennis Johnson, 2-on-1 break. And a block by Cooper. What a play by Cooper. He saved a basket, a sure basket by Boston. Worthy coming back, hits the jumper, and it's a three-point game. 105-102. 109 remaining. 16 on the shot clock. Celtics with only one more timeout. Lakers have a luxury there. Bird. And Rambis. Now Johnson with the ball. The Lakers trying to cut it to one. And he loses it. Again to Dennis Johnson, who's going in against Cooper again.
These were not just mistakes, but they were horrible, uncoordinated, boneheaded plays that you would never expect in a million years from the game's greatest floor general. The Celtics ran away with it, winning the deciding 7th game with a final score of 111-102. For an entire offseason, Earvin Johnson, the man who was once given the nickname Magic due to his dazzling wonders on the court, was now given a new name, Tragic Johnson. According to Magic, he cried all summer long. He loved to be loved, but with this loss, with his new identity, and with the media scrutiny, he entered the most depressing offseason of his entire life up to this point. If you didn't know the player, and were told that a guy had these averages over the course of an NBA Finals series, you would think that it would be considered by many as one of the greatest playoff performances of all time. But in reality, because of a few major blunders in crunch time, it simply earned him the nickname Tragic. Obviously, Magic bounced back the following season, leading his team to 62 wins and eventually the NBA championship, where he got his revenge on Bird and the Celtics. Thanks to a strong second half of his career, Magic was able to make many people forget about the worst part of his career as a pro. But at the very least, for a small window of time, the basketball world viewed this superstar as the very definition of a choker.
This was the rumor. They came to Michael. They really needed Michael to play. Mm-hmm. They came to Michael, and like David Stern and the Olympic team, they came to Michael and said, "Yo, Mike, we really need you to play. We need for you to just go global." And Mike said, "All right, I will play only if Isaiah is not on the team."
Damn. So he really said that?
He said that to them.
Damn.
And then Magic was like, "I'm cool with that."
A lot of people believe that Isaiah Thomas was one of the best 11 NBA players. A lot of people believe, Charles, he was better than John Stockton.
I think he was a better player than John Stockton.
Well, then why didn't he get to go on the team?
Well, you know, Shannon, number one, that is an amazing question because I'm so glad I get a chance to straighten this out.
Yes, please straighten it out.
Number one, they never asked me about Isaiah Thomas.
Okay.
And I can't speak for the other guys, but they never asked me personally about Isaiah Thomas. And Isaiah Thomas probably should have been on the team. And they asked Michael Jordan, did he have anything to do with it? And then it actually just came out in the last year where he said, "I'll play as long as Isaiah don't play."
Thank you.
So,
and then you got to have him. If you're going overseas, you got to take the biggest guy.
So I don't know this personally, but I think it was Jack McCallum who said he had it on tape and he played it. Because I've been asked that question 1,000 times. Dude, they never asked me about Isaiah Thomas. But apparently Michael didn't want him on the team.
Well, he wasn't going to be on the team.
Yeah.
Whoever Michael didn't want on the team wasn't going to be on the team.
We're not going to be on the team.
Now, there has been speculation that your icy relationship with Isaiah Thomas is the reason that he was not selected. Well, what is your reaction to that?
That was one of the stipulations put to me prior to me even committing, that Isaiah wasn't a part of the team. I was getting strong innuendos that it wasn't just, it was coming from higher places that didn't want Isaiah Thomas on the team.
That was so
It was wrong that Shaq and I wasn't on a dream team. It was just wrong.
Does Scottie Pippen have pictures of you or something? What's the deal with Scottie?
Wait a minute, wait, ho.
Something's going on. I'm messing Something's going on.
Did Michael
Did you want him on the team?
Well, I can't speak for Michael, but no, I did not want him on the team.
I don't mind Michael Jordan saying, I didn't want Isaiah to be on the Dream Team. I don't mind, if Larry Bird said, I don't want Isaiah to be on the Dream Team. But if Scottie Pippen say, I don't want Isaiah to be on the Dream Team.
That's the problem.
Man, come on. You can't say nothing.
Okay, I got a new topic for the
You can't say nothing. If Jordan is like, look, I'm not playing. If Isaiah plays, okay. All right. Scottie Pippen, I'm not playing if Isaiah plays. Man, go to the park.
Freedy, I need you to get up for a second. Get up for a second if you would, Freedy. Okay. And Isaiah, lay down on the couch. How long have you been harboring this, Isaiah? Are you feeling better now that it's come out, Isaiah?
Well, Ernie, it's been a while. It's been on my mind, for about, 25 years right now.
Does it feel like a weight is being lifted off of you?
Well, yeah, because I finally get to talk about it and just, the whole Dream Team experience. And again, I got no problems with, the greatest player to ever play say he don't want to play with me, or Magic saying he don't. But anybody below them talking about they don't want to play with me? Anybody?
Excuse me, Mr. Thomas.
And I say below them?
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Your hour is up.
What's crazy is that you guys can tell from the intro of this video that even the players are divided on who is specifically to blame. Whether it was Michael Jordan's fault, the team's fault, or the Olympic Committee's fault, Isaiah Thomas was kept off the team in large part because of the controversial character that he was. Isaiah was the leader of the bad boy Detroit Pistons, which was a group who was famous for their gritty and aggressive style of basketball that was often shamed and condemned by other teams within the league. Sure, the game of basketball was physically punishing in the 1990s, but if the league was at a 10 out of 10 on the physicality scale, then the Pistons specifically were at a 15. Then there was the famous incident where Isaiah Thomas didn't shake hands with the Bulls after his team had been eliminated out of the playoffs. So to put it plainly, Isaiah was not the most popular or liked guy within the league at that time. So naturally, someone kept him off the team. But today, we're looking at it from a different and more unique angle than what's usually discussed. Did Isaiah Thomas actually deserve to be on the Dream Team? Based on the team's needs and based on his talent at that point in his career, did he deserve a spot on that squad? I think the answer is a bit more complicated than some of you realize. Now, people often make the assumption that Isaiah would have been on the squad instead of the backup point guard for Team USA, John Stockton. And although they share the same position on the court, I do think that's an inaccurate assumption. At that point in time, there was no question that Stockton was the better player. Sure, Isaiah arguably had the better peak, but by 1992, his game had taken a few steps back, as he was reaching the twilight of his career. Isaiah was an all-star, but by his prior standards, he had relatively modest averages of 18.5 points, 7.2 assists, and 1.5 steals, while hitting 45% of his shots. His Pistons also had 48 wins, which was the worst record they had had in the previous 6 seasons. On the other hand, John Stockton averaged 16 points while being the league's leader in both assists and steals, with some truly monstrous numbers, and he was also way more efficient from the field, the three-point line, and from the free throw line. Unlike Isaiah, Stockton played all 82 games, was an NBA All-Defender, and even received MVP consideration. So unless you're looking purely at their legacies, there's no way Isaiah was more deserving of a spot than John Stockton. But there's other things to consider, and other ways Isaiah could have got a spot. Let's start by looking at the team overall. At the point guard spot, you had Magic Johnson and John Stockton. At shooting guard, there was Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler. At small forward, there was Larry Bird, Scottie Pippen, and Chris Mullin. At power forward, there was Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and Christian Laettner. And at center, there was David Robinson and Patrick Ewing. So now let's do some process of elimination by going over the untouchables. First off, obviously, Michael Jordan. He's the GOAT, and he was the Olympic Committee's #1 priority to get on that roster. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were the legacy acquisitions. They're legends, and them playing together for one final ride was a big story of emphasis for these Olympics. So regardless of their health and physical condition, they're not being replaced. The team needed a starting anchor in the paint and a backup at the center position as well. So both David Robinson and Patrick Ewing are untouchables for this team. Similarly, Michael Jordan needed a backup at the shooting guard position, and Clyde Drexler was coming off of a season where he averaged 25 points per game, finished second in the MVP voting only behind MJ, and led his Blazers to the NBA Finals, where Jordan and the Bulls knocked him out. For all of those reasons, Drexler is also untouchable. The power forward position also needed a starter and a backup, and Charles Barkley and Karl Malone were two of the best players in the entire league at that time, so without question, both of them were untouchable. Then you have the third power forward in Christian Laettner, and believe it or not, his spot was also safe, because he was the only collegiate athlete on the roster, and the Olympic Committee did that as a way of honoring the old system, where only collegiate athletes were allowed to represent Team USA in the Olympics. So despite the fact that he was clearly the worst player on that team, he was definitely untouchable. This only leaves just two players, Scottie Pippen and Chris Mullin, who both happen to play at the small forward position. The small forward spot is also the only position other than power forward that ran 3 players deep, meaning it would be easy to trim down this position without having to hurt the team's depth. Yes, the power forward spot also ran 3 deep, but again, all of those guys were very untouchable. So it's only natural that we look at replacing one of the small forwards with another point guard in Isaiah. So now we have to ask, who was more deserving of keeping their spot, Scottie Pippen or Chris Mullin? Well, on the Chicago Bulls, Scottie Pippen was a number 2, while Chris Mullin was a number 1 for Golden State. If you look at their numbers side by side, the comparison is pretty tough, as Mullin was a premier scorer, while Pippen was a more well-rounded producer. Mullin did finish 6th overall in the MVP voting in 1992, while Pippen finished 9th. With all this being said, I think the committee would have gone for Scottie Pippen. He was coming off of his 2nd straight championship, and his on-court chemistry with their number 1 option, Michael Jordan, was undeniable. Plus, the Dream Team had plenty of lethal scoring options on the roster. So even though Mullin was a much better scorer, Pippen's gifts were probably more desirable for the team, since he was arguably the best wing defender in the league at that time, only rivaled by Michael Jordan. So after much contemplation, I think Scottie's spot is the one that's safe. Which means that if the committee had selected Isaiah Thomas to be on the roster, he would have most likely replaced Chris Mullin. Which I know sounds awful in hindsight, because Mullin did end up being the team's 4th leading scorer and was by far their most crucial 3-point shooter, as he was 2nd on the team in attempts while hitting an absurd 54% of his 3-point shots. One can argue that Isaiah's legacy and legend status warranted a spot on this roster, especially when you consider that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird made it onto the team even though one was limited by back problems, while the other wasn't even technically in the NBA anymore. So in that sense, you could say he deserved a spot ahead of Chris Mullin. But from a pure talent and production-based standpoint, there's no way Isaiah was deserving of one of the 11 NBA spots. Chris Mullin was clearly the better and more productive player over the course of the 1991 to 1992 season. Beyond that, you could argue that Isaiah Thomas wasn't even the best point guard to not make the team. That's because in Golden State, a young star by the name of Tim Hardaway was at his very peak, as he helped lead his Warriors to a 55-win season while averaging 23 points, 10 assists, 4 rebounds, and 2 steals, while being far more efficient than Isaiah Thomas in every shooting metric, and while finishing 8th overall in the MVP voting. For goodness sake, even point guards like Mark Price and Kevin Johnson warranted some consideration as well, given how their numbers and team records were actually better than Isaiah's. So yeah, from a legacy standpoint, you could make the argument that he deserved to be there. But from a talent and pure basketball perspective, there's just no way that Isaiah Thomas in 1992 was one of the 11 most deserving players in the NBA. And with all of that being considered, it's debatable whether or not him being banned from the roster was even necessary in the first place. Steph Curry is simply amazing. He's a 4-time NBA champion, a 2-time MVP, he's the all-time leader in three-pointers made, and he's now in the argument for being considered as a top 10 player in NBA history. If you're a fan of Curry, then you probably clicked on this video ready to come to his defense, as you assumed that I'm about to go on this giant rant criticizing him. Well, put down your pitchfork and torch, because I'm actually doing the opposite, and pointing out how the perception of Curry and his impact has ultimately affected how much he's appreciated or lack thereof. Let me ask you longtime basketball fans a question. Remember the narrative that you couldn't win an NBA championship as a jump shooting team? That existed for a very, very long time in the NBA. The narrative was basically that soft teams were not built for the postseason. The belief was that when the playoffs started, in order to succeed, you had to embrace a grit and grind type of approach, one that emphasized physicality and defense, and a jump shooting three-point team was generally viewed as the opposite of that. For the most part, this was basically a true narrative all the way through the 2010 NBA Finals. But in 2011, the Dallas Mavericks won the championship as primarily a jump shooting team. But they were more seen as an exception to the rule, because the Mavericks were the underdog in the finals and they had been failing to get it done years before that. And then, after their championship run, they were unable to repeat their success for the rest of Dirk Nowitzki's career. On the other hand, in 2015, the Golden State Warriors won the championship as a jump shooting team. And then they won it again, and again, and again. By the early stages of their dynasty, the narrative that jump shooting teams couldn't win championships was officially and completely dead. Under Steph Curry's leadership on the court, the Warriors changed the perception of playoff basketball and the entire concept of winning basketball. Along with that, Steph Curry won the league MVP in 2015, and then in 2016, he proceeded to become the first ever unanimous MVP winner in NBA history, as he led his Warriors to a record-breaking 73-9 season. Prior to the beginning of the 2016 NBA Finals, many people were beginning to claim that Steph Curry had now surpassed LeBron James as the best player in the NBA. It's hard to say if the majority of people were saying this, but at the very least, a large portion of the basketball community was making this claim. This wasn't just any player temporarily becoming the face of the league, but this was a 6'3" jump shooter. This was a guy who made an NBA record 402 three-point attempts on the season, when no other player in NBA history had ever made it to 300. This was jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring, and unlike anything we had ever seen before. We had never seen someone make so many 30-foot bombs so regularly and so casually. It was literally amazing. And not only was he must-see TV, but he was quickly becoming almost everyone's favorite player to watch. He hadn't just changed the narratives about winning basketball, but he made basketball fans reimagine what the best player in the NBA could look like. It didn't have to be a towering Goliath like Wilt Chamberlain. It didn't have to be a stylish unicorn of an athlete like Michael Jordan. It didn't have to be a scary combination of size and speed like LeBron James. Now, people believe that the best of the best could simply be a skinny, undersized player with a nifty handle and an incredible jump shot. This period of time during the 2016 regular season was when Steph was the most celebrated. Sure, maybe he's moved up on most people's all-time lists since then. But as for the adoration and wonder of Steph Curry, it had never been stronger than it was in this moment in time. Then, things started to change. In the 2016 NBA Finals, the Warriors famously choked away a 3-1 lead, losing the championship series to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Then soon after, the Warriors added a prime Kevin Durant to their 73-9 squad, and what was one of the most shocking acquisitions in basketball history. Overnight, the Warriors went from the organic Cinderella team that everyone was rooting for to the unfair juggernaut villain who took the easy road. With an absurdly stacked roster, the Warriors proceeded to win the championship in 2017 and in 2018. But many people believed that those were some of the most boring seasons in NBA history, due to the Warriors warping the balance of power in the league. To make matters worse, during Golden State's dynastic run, their former head coach Mark Jackson famously got all of the sports headlines when he said that Steph Curry ruined the game of basketball. Basically, he said that Steph's three-point shooting had been so impactful that it essentially inspired a young generation of basketball players to ignore other aspects of the game and focus almost exclusively on three-point shooting. To a certain extent, this seemed to be the case in the NBA as well, as other organizations were looking to replicate the Warriors' success, and inevitably, everyone began shooting an insane amount of threes. After the rise of Steph Curry, the league spiked to the highest volume of three-point shots in history, and it's a number that's still climbing to this very day. Over time, this came with its own series of drawbacks. NBA viewership has become a growing concern, as many old-school basketball fans have given up on the modern game, claiming that it's a dying league. There are many reasons to speculate as for the cause of declining viewership, but one of the most popular choices is how the NBA has been watered down as a jump shooting league that lacks any defense or diversity of styles. It's one thing for nostalgic fans to make this claim, but in the years since Curry's rise, active NBA legends like Greg Popovich, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James have said that the NBA has become too one-dimensional and too influenced by the three-point shot. Now more so than ever before, NBA fandom has become extremely divided, with some celebrating where the league is today, while others have tuned out almost completely, only occasionally engaging when it's about criticizing the modern product. And whether or not it's fair, Steph Curry is the face of this modern product. He ushered in this new era of NBA basketball, thanks to his skill and dedication. But what was once celebrated and seen as a marvelous wonder has now grown stale and repetitive in the eyes of many. To some, Steph Curry is the symbol and cause of what's wrong with the modern NBA. Now, is this fair to Steph Curry? Absolutely not. And I personally still cherish the talent and artistry of his game. I still fondly remember the way he captivated audiences between 2014 and 2016. And I don't think I will ever look back on those years with disgust. But the reality is, many people are not appreciative of his changing influence on the game like they once were. And as a whole, it's affecting his legacy and how he will be remembered by the masses. Steph Curry is one of the greatest players and one of the most influential players of all time. But he'll also be remembered as the player who split basketball fandom. One day, he was the face of the league and the media darling, and now today, he's the symbol of NBA division, and what is one of the sadder evolutions of a basketball legacy.
Throughout the decades, there have been many disappointing NBA franchises. Several organizations have a reputation of consistent losing. But in order to take the title of the most cursed franchise in NBA history, a team has to have more than just consistent failure. It needs to have the expectations and potential set to astronomically high levels just to end up falling tremendously short. One specific organization fits that description to a T: the Portland Trail Blazers. Yes, Portland has one lone championship banner hanging up in the rafters, but that title goes all the way back to the year 1977, and considering the opportunities they've had, this is a franchise that should have many Larry O'Brien trophies, not just one. In order to understand just how far the franchise fell from its potential, we have to take it all the way back to the team's inception. The Portland Trail Blazers started as an NBA expansion team in the 1970-71 season. Like most expansion teams, the Blazers struggled out of the gates, as they missed the playoffs in their first 6 seasons of existence. Fortunately, they had one of the all-time great centers by the name of Bill Walton. With Walton at the helm, the Blazers achieved the unexpected and won the NBA championship in the 1977 season. The Blazers started the following season looking as if they were ready to repeat, and through the first 60 games, they had a 50-10 record. At this point, many people in basketball circles were predicting this team to be an NBA dynasty. Unfortunately, this is where everything began to go downhill. Walton suffered a broken left ankle that caused him to miss the remainder of the season. This certainly wasn't anything out of the ordinary for Walton, as the guy has an injury history long enough to make even Anthony Davis blush. The thing is, Walton suffered so many reoccurring injuries that he began blaming the Blazers medical team and demanded that the organization trade him. Having recently won the championship, Portland's management was hesitant to trade their superstar big man, so in a protest, Walton sat out the entirety of the 78-79 season. By that point, Walton was now a free agent and signed with the San Diego Clippers. If there was anyone who put a curse on the Portland franchise, it was probably Bill Walton on his way out the door, as the Blazers have struggled to replicate their success ever since. After many years of missing the playoffs or early postseason exits, the Blazers found themselves in the 1984 draft with the 2nd overall pick. The incredible Hakeem Olajuwon had just been taken with the first pick by the Houston Rockets. Now remaining on the board was the hyped 7'1" prospect out of Kentucky, Sam Bowie, and then some shooting guard named Michael Jordan. With Portland on the clock, management considered the fact that they already had a young phenom by the name of Clyde Drexler at the shooting guard position. So instead of taking Jordan, they decided to select the big man Bowie in order to fill their lacking center position. This is yet another great example of why you should draft players based on their talent and not by your position needs. Bowie went on to be a bust, as he not only struggled with injuries, but he also failed to live up to the production levels that scouts expected. Meanwhile, Michael Jordan simply went on to be the consensus greatest player of all time. This was a mistake that still haunts Portland to this very day, but unfortunately, this wasn't the last time that they would make this kind of mistake. More on that in a bit. With an extremely talented roster, led by all-stars like Clyde Drexler and Terry Porter, the Blazers made it to the NBA Finals twice, in 1990 and in 1992. Unfortunately, they ran into 2 juggernauts. They were defeated by Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Pistons in 1990, and then defeated by Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls in 1992. From this point on, the Blazers would consistently make the playoffs, but were never really considered again as true title contenders until around the year 2000. Led by players like Scottie Pippen, Rasheed Wallace, Arvydas Sabonis, and Damon Stoudemire, the 99-2000 Blazers won 59 regular season games and had a strong advantage late into the postseason. In Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals against the Los Angeles Lakers, Portland had a 13-point lead at the end of the 3rd quarter, and momentum was clearly on their side. In the 4th quarter, things took a dramatic turn for the worse. Many people think the refereeing in this game was questionable, or even rigged, as the NBA may have had an agenda to get the Lakers to the finals. That may or may not have been the case. But what was even more questionable than the refs' motives was the Blazers' ability to handle the pressure, as they went completely scoreless for an 8-minute stretch in that 4th quarter, including 13 straight missed field goal attempts. Needless to say, the Blazers choked away the game as the Lakers went on to win the NBA championship. Despite having a deep and talented roster worthy of a championship, the early 2000s Blazers just couldn't stop stumbling over their own feet, as the team was deeply affected by their off-the-court issues, which earned them the nickname the Jailblazers. Along with that, they lacked maturity late in games, as players like Rasheed Wallace were consistently receiving technical fouls at a record rate. Based on their depth and their talent, this squad should have won a title. But instead, by the mid-2000s, the franchise was completely in rebuild mode. They appeared as if they were finally ready to turn their misfortunes around, as they had the 1st overall pick of the 2007 NBA draft. History would repeat itself though, as Portland once again had their eyes set on a 7-foot big man, this time a player by the name of Greg Oden. They took Oden with the first pick, and the player they passed up to do so was the incredible scoring assassin Kevin Durant. Due to his various injuries, Oden would only play 105 regular season games in his very short basketball career, and he had completely retired from the NBA by only the age of 26. Meanwhile, Kevin Durant would go on to be a 2-time NBA champion, a 2-time Finals MVP, an MVP, and is now widely recognized as one of the greatest players of all time. It was just like Sam Bowie and Michael Jordan all over again. Even though they botched yet another golden opportunity in the draft, it didn't yet appear as if all hope was lost, as the Blazers still had one of the most lethal weapons in the league, the young shooting guard Brandon Roy. At his peak, Kobe Bryant referred to Roy as the toughest player to guard in the entire Western Conference. But just like every other bright spot in Blazers history, this one didn't last very long either. After making 3 straight All-Star teams, Roy's knees had deteriorated to such an extreme extent that he no longer had any cartilage between the bones. By the time he was 26 years old, he had played his final game with the Portland Trail Blazers. A couple years later, Portland would select the superstar point guard Damian Lillard with the 6th pick of the 2012 draft. But since then, they haven't been able to surround him with the right supporting cast in order to be a championship contender. Basically, ever since they've acquired Lillard, they've been the standard of mediocrity, and that doesn't appear to be changing anytime soon. Here's the thing. As I mentioned earlier in this video, the Blazers are the most cursed franchise in the league, not necessarily because of how bad they are, but because of how promising they appear to be time and time again, just to end up leaving their fan base incredibly disappointed. And here's a stat that perfectly sums that up. From 1983 to 2003, the Blazers went to the playoffs for an impressive 21 consecutive seasons, and yet never won a single championship during that stretch. That's the longest streak of playoff berths without a championship in NBA history. To put that in perspective, the Spurs had a streak of 22 seasons where they made the playoffs and they won 5 championships in that stretch. The Celtics had a streak of 19 seasons and won 11 championships, and the Lakers had a streak of 17 seasons and won 5 championships. That pretty much sums up the Portland Trail Blazers as an organization. Typically, they're not good enough to win championships, but they're also consistently average, which means they're rarely in the draft lottery, which almost completely ruins their chances to acquire franchise players. And even then, when they are in the draft lottery, the universe still finds a way to screw it up for them, just like it did in these instances. All in all, the Blazers should have numerous championship banners in the rafters. They should have the jerseys hung of 2 of the greatest players of all time, and they should have several more Hall of Famers in their history. But unfortunately, injuries repeatedly destroyed those careers. So what do you guys think? Are the Blazers the most cursed franchise in NBA history? Or do you think there's another who's more deserving of that title?
He's known as the captain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. For many years, he was the NBA's all-time leading scorer, and before Michael Jordan won his 6 championships, most people considered Kareem as the greatest player in basketball history. To this day, some still do. Heading into the 1988-89 NBA season, Kareem was 41 years old. He was a 6-time league MVP, a 6-time NBA champion, and a 2-time Finals MVP. Alongside of Magic Johnson and James Worthy, Kareem and the Lakers were looking for their 3rd straight title. It was an extra emotional time in Los Angeles though, because Kareem had announced that this would be his last season in the NBA long before the regular season had concluded. With this in mind, the Lakers were motivated to win the championship yet again for their star center, sending him out on a high note and delivering a storybook ending. But now we fast forward in time. In June of 1989, the NBA Finals were about to take place between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Detroit Pistons. At first glance, it seemed like a colossal battle between 2 dynastic teams, but to understand the shocking results of this series, context is needed. The Detroit Pistons were a strong team who had finished the regular season with a 63-19 record. The team was rich in talent with veterans like Isaiah Thomas, Joe Dumars, Bill Laimbeer, Mark Aguirre, Dennis Rodman, and Vinnie Johnson. They had an all-time great defense and one of the deepest rosters the NBA had ever seen. All of this team was incredibly talented and appeared on paper as if they were championship ready, but the Pistons were yet to prove it in the postseason, and many were skeptical about their abilities to dethrone the defending champions. Just 1 year earlier, the same two teams met in the 1988 NBA Finals, and after a long, hard-fought 7-game series, the Lakers had come out on top, like they had many times throughout the 1980s. The Los Angeles Lakers were heading into the '89 Finals as the defending back-to-back NBA champions, who were seeking the NBA's first three-peat since the 1960s. All of the momentum was clearly on the Lakers' side. The 1987 and 1988 Los Angeles Lakers are still recognized even to this day among the greatest teams in NBA history. The Lakers had begun the decade with a championship and were looking to finish off the decade with their third straight championship and sixth championship in the 80s. They seemed poised to do it too. Magic Johnson was arguably the NBA's best player at the time and led the Lakers to have the best offense in the NBA that season, while securing the League MVP award. He was accompanied by his usual Hall of Fame supporting cast, like James Worthy, who was in the prime of his career and was coming off of last year's Finals MVP award. And of course, he also had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that would be retiring at the end of the season. So the still productive captain of the Los Angeles Lakers was anticipating a fairy tale ending for his career, securing a legendary 7th NBA championship ring as he rode off into the sunset. The story of the season appeared to be indicating that destiny was in fact on the Lakers' side. Not only was the narrative supporting the Lakers, but so was the eye test. The Lakers were an absolute juggernaut throughout the 1989 Western Conference playoffs. The Lakers began the first round of the playoffs by sweeping the talented Portland Trail Blazers 3-0. The second round, they swept an even better Sonics team 4-0. And then they destroyed the powerful 55-win Phoenix Suns in the conference finals 4-0. The Lakers were undefeated throughout the Western Conference playoffs. They were heading into the NBA Finals against the Detroit Pistons, looking to make history and become the only team ever to go undefeated in the NBA playoffs. As a quick recap, the Lakers were going for their third straight title against the team they had just beat the previous year, looking for the exclamation point of a sixth championship in a decade that they had already claimed as their own, led by the league MVP on the final year of arguably the greatest player of all time, with a chance to declare themselves as the greatest team of all time by finishing out an undefeated postseason run, which had never been done before in the history of the NBA. Both of these finals teams were incredibly talented and championship worthy, so a sweep wasn't necessarily expected, but it was presumed that if a sweep was going to happen, it was going to be the Lakers who were doing the sweeping. But as we like to say in the sports world, that's why they play the game. As a footnote, the Los Angeles Lakers shooting guard Byron Scott would be missing the series for his team after popping his hamstring in practice the day before the finals began. With that being said, Michael Cooper was replacing him in the starting lineup. Cooper was a former Defensive Player of the Year and a quality three-point shooter in the NBA during his era, so the Lakers still appeared to be in great shape. When the games began, the Pistons got off to a hot start and never relinquished it. The absence of Byron Scott was beginning to be felt in this series. With Scott unavailable, the Lakers' rotation suffered, and defending all of the Detroit Pistons' perimeter scoring guards became even more difficult. The Pistons took the first game 109-97, leaving the Lakers' hopes of an undefeated postseason run in shambles. The Lakers were poised to bounce back in Game 2. Despite Joe Dumars taking advantage of the Lakers being shorthanded on guards and dropping 24 points in the first half alone, the Lakers still managed to have a 62-56 lead at halftime. If the Lakers could hold on, they would be tying the series at a game apiece, while taking home court advantage with the series heading back to Los Angeles. But that's when disaster struck. With only several minutes left in the third quarter, the Lakers were up by a bucket, and Detroit was on a fast break when Magic Johnson started hobbling. He had pulled his hamstring, and the pain was clearly seen on his face. Magic wanted to push through it, but eventually he had no choice but to sit out the rest of the game. With their MVP gone, the Lakers fought valiantly, but ultimately came up short, falling to the Pistons 108-105. With Game 3 being played back in Los Angeles, the Lakers found themselves in a must-win situation. With the season on the line, Magic Johnson started Game 3, but he wouldn't last very long. After just 5 minutes of play, Magic left the game with severe pain in his hamstring. The still talented Lakers stepped up to the challenge and tried to win at home without their best player. But despite James Worthy's 26 points and Kareem's vintage effort of 24 points and 13 rebounds, the Pistons' healthy talent still prevailed in a close one, 114-110. At this point, the writing was on the wall for the Lakers. Magic Johnson didn't even try to play in the fourth game of the NBA Finals. James Worthy was one superstar who wasn't going out without a fight, and dropped an efficient 40 points in Game 4. Despite the Lakers' good start to the game, the Pistons' overall healthy talent eventually wore them down, winning the fourth and final game of the series, completing what is now known as one of the most stunning sweeps in NBA history. Kareem closed out his final game at the age of 42, while his iconic co-star was forced to watch from the sidelines. In that last performance, Kareem finished with just 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists on 2 of 8 shooting. Ultimately, it's not the worst way for a legend to end his career, but considering how things deteriorated in the NBA Finals and how the Lakers won the championship just a year prior, Kareem went down as another example of a player calling it quits just a little later than what would have been ideal.
Before we get into the video, I want to make a disclaimer. Obviously, it is impossible to know with complete certainty what kind of player Len Bias would have been. But I do think there's evidence that allows us to speculate, and that at the very least, we can make an educated guess on how good he would have been. So let's get into it. Len Kevin Bias. Most of you NBA fans are familiar with this young man's tragic story, but for those of you who are not, let me at least give you a quick recap. Bias was a 6'8" small forward/power forward who played 4 years in college for the University of Maryland. Bias's game was filled with potential, and he was one of the best players in all of college basketball, as he was a 2-time ACC Player of the Year. Bias was also famously known to have epic battles in college with Michael Jordan, as they often appeared as equals in terms of talent and performance, or at least very close to it. Bias was a highly coveted prospect heading into the 1986 NBA Draft. Meanwhile, in the NBA, Magic Johnson's Lakers and Larry Bird's Celtics were the premier teams in the league. The Celtics went on to win the 1986 NBA championship, led by their stars Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish. That 86 Celtics team is still considered to this day as one of the greatest teams of all time. Fast forward to the NBA Draft, and thanks to a trade a couple years earlier with the Seattle Supersonics, the Boston Celtics owned the second overall pick in the draft the same year they won the championship. Cleveland had the first overall pick and needed a big man, so they selected the future All-Star center Brad Daugherty. So with the second pick, the Boston Celtics selected their exciting forward of the future, Len Bias. Adding a future Hall of Famer to the all-time great and defending champion Celtics team appeared to be a solidifying factor in continuing this Boston dynasty. But then, less than 48 hours later, while he was at his college dorm room celebrating with his friends, Len Bias had a seizure and collapsed. Soon after medical attention arrived, it was confirmed that Bias had passed away at the age of 22. It was simply a coke overdose, making Len Bias the poster child of the NBA's terrible drug issues in the 1980s. Naturally, this tragedy has gone on to make Len Bias arguably the greatest what-if in NBA history. So now that we're all informed, let's get into the meat of this video. First off, let's talk about Bias's skills and establish what defined his game and what made him such a unique talent. As I mentioned earlier, Bias was a 6'8" wing who could switch between the 3 or 4 spot on the court. He was lean, but very muscular. As a 22-year-old, he hadn't fully grown into his man body yet, but he still appeared as if he was ready to bully grown men in the post once he hit the NBA. He was incredibly athletic with a remarkably high vertical leap, especially considering his size. Maybe his best quality was his beautiful and smooth mid-range jump shot.
With his solid footwork, tall stature, long arms, and high 2-foot leap, his jump shots were extremely tough to contest. He was very efficient from the field as well, shooting about 54% over the course of his college career. He wasn't much of a playmaker or a facilitator, but his two great gifts were essentially his scoring and rebounding. These are the key aspects of his game that I want us to pay attention to. I spent a lot of time thinking about other players in basketball history who were similar to Bias in terms of their stature, strength, athleticism, position, their skill set, and even their numbers in college. Here's a few names I came up with: Dominique Wilkins, Larry Johnson, and Xavier McDaniel. Now let me make this clear before I continue. I think Bias would have been better than all of these guys, even Dominique, as great as he was. But what I'm doing is trying to get a basis to work from, looking at their college and pro statistics to give us kind of a general idea in what kind of a player we might be getting in Bias. All of these guys had varying degrees of great athleticism and strength, just like Bias. They were all pretty good scorers who had an offensive style similar to Bias as well. Take a look at the numbers from each of these stars from their last season in college. They all clearly had high expectations too, based on the fact that they were all top 4 picks in the draft. Notice their high scoring and rebounding numbers and also their lack of assists. Again, this is showing their similar tendencies. All of these players went on to be all-stars in the NBA, although Dominique was clearly on another level from the other two. In my opinion, Xavier McDaniel and Larry Johnson was Len Bias's floor. There's no way he wouldn't have been as good as these two players in the NBA, although like I said before, I think he likely would have been much better than both of them. The most comparable career I think he would have had would have been to Dominique Wilkins. Both great leapers, similar footwork, same height, same hot spots on the court, and so on. Remember how I said Bias had epic scoring battles with Michael Jordan in college while they played for Maryland and North Carolina? Well, you know who had epic scoring battles in the pros with Jordan? Dominique Wilkins. This is what I envision for Bias as a pro, like Dominique 2.0 on the offensive side of the ball, averaging 26 to 32 points per game in the prime of his career while accumulating 8 to 10 rebounds a game. But I said he would be better than Dominique, but that wasn't because of the offensive side of the court, but the defensive side. Bias showed incredible potential in college with his defensive prowess. He could frustrate players, cause turnovers, had a tremendous wingspan, and was a terrific shot blocker, often blocking shots you would think would be out of his reach. Dominique didn't have that on the defensive end, not even close. Another thing about the solo duels in college between Bias and Jordan. Bias had arguably greater numbers in college than Jordan did, and based on their talent and what we saw from them on the floor, he appeared every bit as ready for the pros as Jordan did. And how ready was Jordan? Well, let's put it this way. In Michael's rookie year, he took the NBA by storm, averaging 28.5 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists on 51% shooting. If MJ is any indication, then Bias would have had a significant impact immediately upon entering the league. Which brings me to my next point. Bias was joining the fantastic Boston Celtics. The year he would have been a rookie, the Celtics went on to the NBA Finals where they lost in 6 games to the Los Angeles Lakers. If Bias was as good as I'm projecting him to be, then I can't possibly see how he wouldn't have been the difference in that series and helped the Celtics win their 2nd straight championship. Keep in mind, Larry Bird was the starting small forward and McHale was the starting power forward, so the plan likely would have been to bring Bias off the bench. But with Larry dealing with ongoing back problems and with McHale trying to push through the playoffs with a broken foot, there would have been plenty of minutes available for Bias to shine as a star and make his impact. In an interview with Bill Simmons, Larry said that if Bias had lived, he would have retired in 1988, meaning the passing of the torch would have happened very quickly between Bias and Bird. It's likely then that Jordan and Bias would have gone on to have many epic battles through the years in the Eastern Conference playoffs. One thing I'm almost sure of is that by the end of Bias's career, we wouldn't have seen him as just another one of those star players that Jordan kept from winning championships. Because like I said, I think the Celtics would have won the championship in his 1987 rookie season. So in recap, how good do I think Bias would have been? Well, essentially, Dominique on offense with a hint of Larry Johnson and Shawn Kemp, and significantly better than all of those guys on defense. Add on at least 1 championship ring, but maybe even a few if things went right. It's also important to keep in mind that he passed away from a coke overdose. If coke had continued to be an issue for him, it's possible that it could have screwed up his career even if he had lived. That has in fact happened with other great players in the NBA's history. But again, this is just my educated guess on the player he would have been. Let me know your educated guesses in the comments section. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.